Wait a minute. This has all happened before.
Yeah, this does seem really familiar.
The best of retro gaming radio.
Keep it retro.
Prepare to qualify.
Retro Gaming Radio. Shane Armonroe, Bryan Smith behind the mixing board. Keep it retro.
Welcome to Volume 1 of the best of retro gaming radio. This is Shane Armonroe. Brought to you courtesy of Fernando Garcia, Flair, our illustrious information director here at Retro Gaming Radio. He's pieced together the absolute best chunks of retro gaming radio for this special compilation show. First off, we're going to take a look at What is a Classic Game, one of our editorial commentaries. A great interview with Warren Davis from the Classic Gaming Expo 2003, the guy behind Q-Bert. It's a great interview. You're going to love it. We also have a story from our vault when Bryan and myself visit Funcoland, and they're dying not to take our money. You're going to love that, too. We're going to have an 8-bit flashback classic for you, Realms of Impossibility, a.k.a. Touch Me! And finally, a 16-bit flashback on Super Mario World with myself and Bryan Kid Hype Smith. Always entertaining when we jam. I hope you enjoy the show and look forward to other Best of Retro Gaming Radio episodes in the future. This is the Best of Retro Gaming Radio with Shane Armonroe and Bryan Kid Hype Smith. Let's start with this month's rant. What is a classic game? Now, I'm going to read you this email first. It's from Evan Casey. Evan Casey writes in, after hearing the letter that was read on February's Retro Gaming Radio, I must say I got a little pissed at the Super Nintendo generation ruining the emulation scene. Personally, I can say that the EMU scene has been quite trash, but I feel blaming a bunch of 15 to 20-year-olds for the fault is rather unfair, as well as implying we're not classic gamers. That was the bit that really irked me. The SNES Genesis era was a great time for gaming. Games such as Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy 4 through 6, Street Fighter 2, Super Mario World, Super Castlevania 4, one of the best Castlevanias in my opinion, Earthworm Jim, etc. I feel these games were excellent, fun, addicting, and simple, just like the great classics. So if 16-bit isn't classic, what is? 8-bit? Commodore 64? The real ruiners of the scene are all those people that see emulation as a way to steal from people that deserve money for their great work, which they can easily purchase at any decent gaming store. You know, the kids that download The Legend of Zelda to play on an N64 emulator, or people that download all the new games for the Game Boy Advance. Great system for 2D gaming, just because they can get it for free. And as for what I define as the generation that's not classic, I feel it's the kids who had a PlayStation as their first console, or even a Nintendo 64. That's the generation that doesn't know a good set of classics, but what can you expect if the first game the kid plays starts out with a 3-minute fully rendered full-motion video? Sincerely, Evan F. Casey. Well, there's a lot of things in this letter that I wholeheartedly agree with. You really can't expect somebody who started off on a PlayStation or an N64 to really understand what a classic game is. The thing is, a lot of people, and including myself, we often misuse the term classic game to mean old game. And I'm as guilty of it as anybody else. You know, if I talk about a game that came out in 1985, I'll call it a classic game. In reality, it's really an old game. Pac-Man, for example, is a classic. Naughty Boy is not a classic, but they're both old games. If you want to know why Pac-Man's a classic and Naughty Boy is not a classic, we'll continue. My producer and I actually shot a bunch of emails back and forth about our opinions on what a classic game is. And a classic game is not every old game. A classic game has to fit into a certain set of parameters to make it classic. And I think most people out there are going to agree with what I call a classic game. And if I'll run through these, and I'm sure we're going to get floods of email about this, and that's cool. I want to hear what you have to say. But think about these parameters, and I'm going to tell you my producer's point of view on some of the ones that he maybe disagreed or slanted me on. The first thing, a modern game, that is a console that is still currently alive. Let's say PlayStation 2, Xbox, GameCube. A modern game that changed the face of gaming forever, if this is even possible anymore, is called an innovative game until it gets old. Let's say PlayStation 2 goes away. Then it becomes a classic game. A good example of this is Choo Choo Rocket on the Dreamcast. Choo Choo Rocket's a fairly new game, but the Dreamcast is dead, right? You can't buy when the games are on sale. They're not making any new games. So for all intents and purposes, the Dreamcast is dead. Choo Choo Rocket started off as an innovative game. It is now a classic game. Bryan says he thinks it's an instant classic when it redefines a genre. Pac-Man was a classic in 1982 in his book. Now, to me, when a game first comes out, it's a sensation or it's an innovation when it changes the face, not necessarily an instant classic. Instant classic sounds like a really terrible marketing term that you see like on every $14.95 game that you see at Walmart or Babbage's. An instant classic, says New York Times. Yeah, right, instant classic. Okay, what else might define a classic game? Well, an old game, of course, that's forever changed the face of gaming is a classic game. Some of the games that Bryan wanted to say was a classic that would be more of a modern game would be Jet Grind Radio. You think I'm thinking about classic games? Jet Set Willy. Don't tell me that just wasn't. I don't know. I'm not even going to get into Jet Set Willy. Jet Grind Radio is definitely a classic in Bryan's book as well as Crazy Taxi, and I could not agree more. Crazy Taxi and Jet Grind Radio have ports on modern games, gaming systems, so I really have trouble considering that a classic. I do feel that Jet Grind Radio and Crazy Taxi were innovative, but if you listen to my past shows, well, I love Crazy Taxi. Let's not forget Crazy Taxi owes its roots to Space Taxi on the Commodore 64. If you play Space Taxi on the C64 and then play Crazy Taxi, you will be completely convinced that somebody at Sega has played and loved Space Taxi so much they turned into Crazy Taxi. I know every now and then an idea can cross over and two people completely independent think of the same thing. But in this case, I find it really hard to believe. Those of you who played Space Taxi know what I'm talking about. My next point about classic games, remakes or rehashes can never be classic games. Street Fighter, the original Street Fighter, classic game. Street Fighter Turbo 3 Super Alpha the movie 37, that's not a classic. Sorry. The only exceptions to these sort of situations are things like Pac-Man and Ms. Pac-Man. The games are so close in what you do and how you do it, yet there was enough innovation behind it, there was enough change where the basic premise of the game wasn't destroyed in order to continue the saga. Now, no one really believes that Ms. Pac-Man's a sequel or a remake of Pac-Man. It's a standalone game. But these are the sort of gray areas that you have to look at when you start looking at this particular rule. Bryan chimes in that Ms. Pac-Man was the first multi-maze game, and not really in the same league as Pac-Man, and I agree. And Super Pac-Man and Baby Pac-Man also took the paradigm a step further while still keeping the initial drive of the game. Now, we were talking about Junior Pac-Man, which I think is kind of funny. To me, Junior Pac-Man was kind of the last-ditch effort to kind of keep the saga alive, and I thought it really showed, but Bryan thought it was really innovative. So, kind of a different slant on it. Of course, he didn't like Pac-Man Plus, which I thought was innovative. So, there you have it. So we both agreed that Pac-Man Jr., Junior Pac-Man probably would not be considered a classic. However, it was still a cool game. Okay, my next point of classic game. Original rehashes of classic games can never be classics. Spy Hunter at the arcade, classic. Spy Hunter on the PlayStation 2, not classic. Once you steal the name of a game, Galaga, Dig Dug, Tempest, Spy Hunter, you lose any nods or props for originality. I don't care how different Spy Hunter is for the PlayStation 2. You stole fizzy lifting drinks. I mean, you stole the name of the game and you get nothing. Good day, sir. No, I love that bit. The difference between Spy Hunter at the arcade and Spy Hunter for the PlayStation 2 is everything but the name, and you know that, and we all know that. You cannot allow a game that steals a title or takes a title, which automatically brings certain expectations to the table, and expect to get away with it and hope that your game can be classic. It just doesn't work. And prime examples of these are the Galaga Destination Earth, the Centipede Adventure. A lot of the Hasbro remakes were just like this. Barely shared any concept of the game. And I've seen Spy Hunter for the PlayStation 2, so I don't even want to go into that. So let's move along. My next point of contention on classic gamings. There's only one proper conversion of a classic game can be a classic game in itself. For example, Pac-Man at the arcade was a classic game. Pac-Man on the 2600 was not a classic game. Why? Because Pac-Man on the 2600 wasn't enough like the real Pac-Man. You know, they tried hard and they worked with what they had. But let's be honest. Pac-Man on the 2600 was ass. I don't care how you slice it. Pac-Man on the 2600 was ass, okay? Now, what about Pac-Man on another platform? Say, the NES. Now, a lot of you know I'm not a big NES fan, but I got to give them props and give a nod and say that Pac-Man on the NES was a classic game. Why? Because it was the first officially licensed port that was as true to the arcade game as possible. Now, let's just put it this way. Puck-Man. That was Puck, you guys. Come on. This is an MP3. You can hear that. Puck-Man on the C64 was almost pixel perfect to Pac-Man. But it can't be a classic. Why? Because it wasn't Pac-Man, it was Puck-Man. Okay, that falls under the rehash and remake policy. Another good example of this is Donkey Kong. Donkey Kong redefined platform games. In the arcade, Donkey Kong, classic. Donkey Kong on the 2600, not classic. That was the farthest stretch of an arcade port that I've seen in a long time. But Donkey Kong on the ColecoVision, classic. Why? Because everybody, critics, gamers, everybody alike said, wow, that actually looks like the arcade game. It plays and sounds like the arcade game. Very cool. That's what makes the first proper port of a game a classic, when you can pull that off. Okay? Back to onto the next one. Oh, yeah. Now, let me put in Bryan's 2 cents here. He agrees that a good console conversion is a classic. But he also goes on to say that Pac-Man 20th Anniversary was not a classic. Now, we corresponded back and forth about this one a little bit. Let me say, if you've heard my previous shows, Pac-Man 20th Anniversary, not this new Pac-Man 2 for the PlayStation 2. We're talking about the original Pac-Man Anniversary for the PlayStation 1. Fabulous game. I thought they took a genre that was basically dead and gone and were able to breathe new life into it. And when you can get away with that, you know, you got to get props and kudos for that. Doesn't necessarily make you a classic, though. It doesn't fall into our parameters. We had a little point of contention. I said I thought Donkey Kong Country should be considered a classic because it took a console game and used rendered graphics. And as far as I know, it was the first game console, not necessarily according to the 3DO people, but let's say popular console, that used rendered graphics. To me, that kind of gave it an impact, a change that changed the face of games. But Bryan went on to point out that there were other rendered games first, such as Killer Instinct, and in that respect, Donkey Kong Country should not be considered a classic. So we kind of came to a draw on that one. Next classic gaming point. Blatant knockoffs can never obtain classic status. Puck-Man, as I said before, as great as it was, cannot get classic status. It was a clone knockoff of Pac-Man. Any game that the first time you see it, the first words out of your mouth is, oh, damn, that's identical to insert favorite game here. You know, you can't get away with total rehashes and remakes that are complete clones and expect to get a classic game nod. Doesn't work. However, there have been games, and these are far and few between, folks. There are games that borrow elements of other games. put them all together so you don't get a game that's like any other game. But you go to parts of the game and say, oh, well, that's just like Tard, or wow, that's just like Snake, or that's just like this, or that's just like that. Those are the sort of games that you can't be allowed to have as called classics. Okay, let's move on to the next point. Classic status can also be awarded to original games that receive some sort of weird, eerie cult status, either good or bad. For example, E.T. on the 2600, classic game. Why? We all agree that E.T., well, okay, not everybody. Bryan, I think, is the only person on the planet that loves E.T. Okay, so I can't say everybody. Almost everybody hated that game, right? But you know what? If you go to anybody like over the age of 26 and say, hey, do you remember E.T. on the 2600? They'll probably shudder. They'll probably wince up their face in this nasty little, and they'll say, oh, God, that game sucked. And they're right. But they remember it. Everybody had it, right? Because they were giving the things away. And, I wouldn't be surprised to remember that Lucky Charms probably had an E.T. card in every box for a certain period of time. Right? But it meets that status, freaky status cult situation. We're going to talk more about that in just a minute. A good classic status award that's got a cult following was Grid Runner. Now everyone's, Grid Runner, yeah, Llama Soft, yeah. Grid Runner, I don't remember it making a lot of cash. But you know what? Everybody knew what it was. Everybody still knows what it is, which is amazing. And it's got a freaky cult following. When you say classic game, you look that up in the dictionary, chances are you'll see, a screenshot of Grid Runner next to it. Now, that being said, let's move on to the next point. Movie licensed titles can never be classic games unless they match up with the last point, which is having a freaky cult status. Cloak and Dagger, the arcade game. Classic. Why? The game had a very freaky history. It was a vaporware title that tied in with the movie. As you'll recall, if you've seen the movie, and it's a guilty 80s pleasure, I'll admit it. Anything with Dabney Coleman in it is a guilty pleasure. More games, please. Okay, thanks. Cloak and Dagger was in the movie, Cloak and Dagger, obviously. And in the game, they were shown playing Cloak and Dagger, the arcade game, as it turned out, by the way, on an Atari 5200. There were Atari 5200 boxes all over the store where this guy was, quote, quote, playing the game on his, quote, 5200. Well, that created such a rampage. Everybody wanted the game to tie in with the movie, but they never released the 5200 version of Cloak and Dagger. That sort of weird, freaky cult. It's like Last Starfighter. If they would have ever put out the game that they were planning, yeah, I know there was a 5200 port of that, but no. If they'd ever actually put out the real game that they were planning to do, and if you go and look up on the net and look for the Last Starfighter frequently asked questions, they'll tell you that there was a video game planned. There's nothing at all like the game on the movie, of course. But if that game had ever came out, it would have instantly been a classic. Simply because of all of the stigma and freaky stuff around it. Even if the game had totally blew goat, it still would have been a classic game. And there's no way you can get around that. Now, Bryan and I talked about the game Tron. My friend Ron's going to be sitting there, his ears just perked up when I said Tron. Tron, in many senses, is not a classic game. Now, before Ron hits the stop button on Winamp, Tron didn't have necessarily a lot of original gaming inside of it. All right, the light cycles were a basic version of Surrounder Snake, which had been around forever. The tanks, as Bryan pointed out, was a knockoff of Targ. And the grid bugs and MCP, okay, well, I'm sure if I thought long enough, I could put a tie into those. Why then, if it's a movie tie-in, which automatically disqualifies it for the most part, Tron did have a cult status, but the game didn't necessarily have a cult status. Yet, if you go up to somebody, in our age group that's actually seen a Tron machine, and said, hey, what do you remember about the Tron video game? And even the ones that would say, well, I never played the game, but I sure remember the cabinet. It had that cool black light coming out of it, the blue glow coming around it. It was totally killer. But I never played it. That's what makes Tron classic. When you go up to somebody and say, somebody who never even played the game, but remembers the cab, and remembers an element of the cab, you got to give them props, and you got to nod your head and say, okay, we'll let it into the Classic Hall of Fame. Discs of Tron, on the other hand, that's a real hard one. Bryan says right off the cuff, yeah, Discs of Tron's a classic game. I have to kind of think about that one, because Discs of Tron, the gameplay was unique, the perspective was fairly unique, the controls were very unique. The environmental cab was just cool as hell. When you walked by it, you couldn't help but go put a quarter in it, or 50 cents, I think it was at the time. Had the cool speech and had a good atmosphere about it. But was the game any fun? That's really the key point. A lot of people love Discs of Tron. I thought it was kind of frustrating. At the same time, who am I to say? Bryan says Discs of Tron classic. I say, maybe he gets a nomination, but not necessarily the award. Now, the next point, a game does not have to sell well or be brutally overfeatured to be a classic. It must, however, fit into the other criteria that we're talking about. Bryan's response is, tell the fighting game idiots that. I'll let you guys just mull around on that one on your own. Suffice to say, games that sold 10 copies can be classics just as easy as a game like E.T. that sold like 20 million copies. I wouldn't be surprised to see another E.T. game pop up with Spielberg re-releasing E.T. to the theaters and on DVD. Crazy. Next point of classic gaming. A port of a game on a different platform other than the original platform can be a classic if it significantly improves or markedly shows progress and here's the big part of it, must follow the original game 100% without deviation, as well as meet the other criteria for a classic game. Let me give you an example, because this is a pretty obscure category here. Prince of Persia originated on the Apple II. If you've played the Apple II version, you know it was less than cool. I mean, it was cool for the time because of the game and stuff. But, you look at the graphics, you look at the sound, and let's just say it could have been done better. Right? Obviously, it's Apple II. What do you want? All right, now, the Amiga version of Prince of Persia is by far the prettiest, the most identical to the original game, not this weird 3D Prince of Persia crap that just came out. What was up with that? But the Amiga port was 100% the same game. No changes, no new power-ups, none of that other crap that remakes usually have. This was a port, but it was beautiful. The sound was dramatically improved. It became a totally different game while retaining everything about the game that made it classic to begin with. These sort of ports don't happen very often, folks, and they usually happened in the transition period where the IBM PC could make beeps and 16-color graphics, while machines like the C64 and Amiga were running full-color, full-stereo sound. A lot of times, the ports, games originated on the PC, got ported over to the Amiga or the 64, and turned into complete classics on their own while leaving the original port in the dust. That can happen. Next point of contention, a classic or a gaming platform. Okay, this is more of a direct answer to my listener who wrote in. A gaming platform gets a classic status and ranking based on the ratio of classic games to crap games. Okay? This is why when I come up here and I talk about classic gaming, the NES and the Super NES often rank the lowest on my console classic status. The NES had 1.21 gigamillion games for it, right? But let's face it, there weren't that many Pac-Mans, okay, on the NES. All right. Yes, I will give the ultimate nod and say yes, Super Mario Brothers on the NES was a classic. But you look at all of the crappy arcade ports that came over to the NES. Jackal, what were some of the other ones? There were so many of them. And Bryan chimes in and says, NES conversions pissed me off so much I didn't even buy an SNES until after the system died. You can't call it a conversion when all you did was steal the name. At least you can say this about Sega and Atari. Either it was an exact arcade port or they just didn't do it. That, to me, speaks miles about a gaming system, okay? And that's a lot of times why I don't consider NES and SNES games and systems to be classic in nature. They're old, they're dead, but do they rate a classic status? Where do they rate amongst the other consoles, okay? Now let's look at it. You know, did Nintendo NES have some classic games? Sure it did. Did Super Nintendo have some classic games? Well, it's hard to really think of an SNES game that follows all of the bullet points that I just read off to you about what I consider a classic game, okay? You can say that Star Fox was a classic game because it redefined shoot-'em-up flying games, okay? I don't necessarily follow that belief, okay? There were other flying games that redefined what a flying game or a fighting action flying game should be, okay? Like I said, sometimes only one game in a genre can get the classic status. Then it becomes knockoffs and remakes. I think what probably annoyed me about the Nintendo quote-quote classic consoles is, like Bryan said, the NES conversions were crap. I'm sorry, folks. Especially if you compared it with the ports that went to the C64 or the Atari 800. Those ports were very clean, and in many cases were just like the arcade. The NES ports, like he said, basically stole the name, and that was pretty much it. The SNES bugged me. I mean, there's so many reasons. I don't even want to go into all of them, but basically the sanitation system that Nintendo went on the rampage to accomplish for the SNES, to me, was a symbol of I'm not sure what the word I'm looking for is, but I'll just give you an example. You can fashion your own outlook. Nintendo kept very close control of its properties, so to speak. Now, Midway, when they released Mortal Kombat, the Mortal Kombat games, at that time for the consoles that were available, they basically did what is a lot of people still today consider to be the best port of Mortal Kombat 2 to a console, okay? But those of you who know all about Mortal Kombat 2 on the SNES knows there was no blood. Now, Mortal Kombat without blood, without fatalities, without the trademark items of the game, is no longer a port of the game. It's a hack at best. It's a crappy remake at worst, okay? When Nintendo told Midway, you don't get to release Mortal Kombat 2 until you sanitize it. We are a happy family company, and we don't think that you should have blood, guts, gore, and fatality on the screen. All right, this goes back to the same old censorship issues that we've had to deal with for the last 40, 50 years. Okay? If you don't like what's on TV, turn the channel. If you don't want your kids playing a bloody, gory Mortal Kombat game, you don't buy the cartridge for them. Okay? Nintendo had no business telling developers what they could and couldn't develop. Okay? Look back at the classic consoles. Okay? The good classic consoles. Look at Genesis. You never saw Sega smacking people around for having blood on the screen. Go back to the C64. Okay? There was no ownership of companies trying to produce something. I saw a game called, what was it, Smurf Massacre. I wish I still had a copy of that. Hey, if there's any of the listeners that have a copy of Smurf Massacre for C64, send me the disc image. I'd love to see that again. There's no governing body, okay? You look at the 2600. Now, granted, you couldn't get a lot of gore and stuff on the 2600. It just wasn't possible. But you didn't see gaming companies or console companies regulating, sanitizing, and basically limiting your choices like Nintendo did. Okay? That to me was the stupidest thing they could have done. That to me means I am not as important to them as the gay-ass media is that controls and says, oh, Nintendo had blood on their version of Mortal Kombat. It's like, it goes back to the Night Trap thing, okay? Nothing pisses me off more than watching the media take something, blow it out of proportion. And the funny thing is, you saw senators and governors and all these politicians bad-mouthing Night Trap, saying that your job as the player was to kill girls. It was obvious at that point in time. 1, they'd never seen the game. 2, they'd never played the game. And 3, they didn't know anything about the game. Okay? Based on that, based on the bullying media, I believe Nintendo said, well, we're going to make a kid-safe friendly system. All right? And all that did was piss off a generation of consumers that were ready to get die-hard ports. The sound on Mortal Kombat 2 on the NES was brilliant. Okay? I can't deny that. It kicked the Genesis's butt. But you know what? After playing both at, I don't remember what the big discount store was back then, Walmart or whatever, when I played it on those two machines, I instantly went and I actually bought a Sega Genesis just to play Mortal Kombat 2. All right? The NES or the SNES, not even an option. Why? Because they destroyed and took it upon themselves to dictate to a developer what they could and couldn't do. And, I don't believe in that. I don't believe in that sort of censorship. Super Nintendo lost dozens and dozens of points for me. I hear the same thing. Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy. I hear these same titles thrown around all over the place. In all honesty, those are the Super Nintendo generation kiddies that say that stuff. I've yet to find a classic gamer like myself, like my producer, like my friends, who have a rich understanding and enjoyment of classic games that liked any of those games. Castlevania. I don't know any of my friends or any of my close, my close game players that liked that stuff, that liked Castlevania, that liked Chrono Trigger. Okay? To me, those were a platform-dependent, generational-dependent game. That does not qualify it for a classic gaming status. Okay? Classic game is Tetris. Everybody in the world knows what Tetris is. I could walk up to somebody on the street who doesn't own a computer, doesn't own a console, never has owned a console, and say, hey, Tetris. Oh, yeah, I've heard of Tetris. Why? Tetris is a classic game. Pac-Man. Everybody knows what Pac-Man is, right? Everybody knows what Pac-Man is. Everybody knows what Tetris is. These are the sort of games, these are the sort of things that get included in a conversation about classic games. Chrono Trigger does not fall into a casual conversation when you say, hey, let's talk about the best classic games ever made. You hear Pac-Man, you hear Donkey Kong, you hear Space Invaders. For God's sake, Space Invaders. You say Chrono Trigger. You know what? Arcades at that time, when Space Invaders came out, had pinball machines, pachinko machines, right, in Japan and Asia. Those were the hot items. When Space Invaders came out, they took that phenomenon and they removed their pinball machines. They removed their pachinko machines. You could go into a Japanese arcade, and along every wall that there was floor space to do so was a Space Invaders machine. Not Space Invaders Deluxe. Not Space Invaders 1990. Not Chrono Trigger, the arcade game. Space Invaders. Stupid, back and forth, shoot, advancing alien Space Invaders. And people quit their jobs. People snuck out of their jobs. People stole money, robbed banks. They did whatever it took to feed a Space Invaders machine. And then Pac-Man came along and stole all the Space Invaders quarters. That's a phenomenon. That is a classic. That doesn't happen anymore. Okay? That plain doesn't happen anymore. And yes, you can look at it as a change in culture. Arcades aren't big anymore. And yes, you can tell me about how people stood in line for 5 days to get a GameCube. Okay? People are cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And you know what? The people who quit their jobs to play Space Invaders were cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs too. But you know what? Today, right now, all the people that stood in line to get a PlayStation or the N64 version of Zelda. There was some game that came out with a bunch of hype. I thought maybe it was Super Mario 3. I don't remember. But anyway, there was a game that came out. See, this is how you know it's not a classic. I don't even remember the damn thing. They released a game that had so much promotion, had so much user anticipation, gamer anticipation, that they sold out. They pre-ordered, sold out. People were waiting in line to get this game. Where's that game today? Who remembers that game today? Who still has a copy of the game? You know? Who has stories to regale about how they quit their job to go pick up a Super Mario 3 cartridge for their kid? You know? This is what I'm talking about. You can tell me how classic games like Final Fantasy are. Okay? You can tell me how classic Super Mario 36 with FX chip capability in the SNES was. The honest truth is they don't warrant the status. And if you look at it, if you go through all the points I've brought up, and you talk to people, you know, the classic gaming community in general, you'll understand why those games aren't classics. You know? It's important to realize, too, that classics follow generations. Unfortunately, there was a rift that there are people like me and my clan, the people who listen to the show, that grew up during the video game craze. They knew what the 80s video game crash was all about. They watched it happen, and they saw the effects. They saw new consoles coming out of the water. Nowadays, there really isn't a lot of the innovation that you see, that you saw before. In the old days, when the Commodore 64 was in its prime, let's say, developers didn't write games knowing that in a year and a half another console would come out and they'd be able to write better games, you know. They didn't look at the chronology of gaming the same way as they do now. Right now, if you were a video game developer for a major console, you know that in a year and a half you'll have another console to develop for. Something new, more powerful, and better, right? What you're doing is biding time until the next platform comes along. This is why the licensing and the remakes and the rehashes are becoming so popular. You know, you only have a short window to take advantage of the sensationalism of a console. All right? In the old days, there was none of that stuff. Okay? There was no minimum maximum system requirements. You either had an Atari 800 or you didn't have an Atari 800. You had a 2600, you didn't have a 2600. You know, it's not you have a Nintendo 64 and a memory expansion pack to play Alone in the Dark. You know, I'm surprised, to be honest with you, that the Xbox hasn't magically come out with an expansion pack yet. But you know, somewhere on that machine, there's a little removable panel, or there's some little plug that nobody knows what it does, or they've managed to model a controller port into some sort of an expansion device, and they're going to follow the same pattern of PCs and make the Xbox expandable in some way. Even if it's just into a computer. You know what's going to happen. I mean, you could bank money on it. I think I do have some money on it somewhere. But suffice to say, today there is no path set for classic gaming. You know, games come out, they're tooted, they're forgotten. You know, that's the simple truth. Or they're spawned into so many sequels you can't help but remember it. What, Final Fantasy's up to what, 10 now? Well, yeah, obviously you're not going to forget what Final Fantasy is because there's a brand new game complete with lots of full motion video on the commercial and no actual gameplay, which, by the way, one of my listeners wrote in on ICQ and said, you know what pisses me off? Shelling out big cash for a game I saw on TV on a commercial, taking it home, and finding out what they showed me on the commercial was all full motion video. All cutscenes, no actual gameplay. I said, yeah, welcome to modern video game marketing. Video games cannot stand, it seems, on gameplay alone anymore. There's a whole new side to video games. It's called marketing. And it has nothing to do, in the old days, it used to be that a game would sell itself. And if you listen to my old shows, I talk about this endlessly. A game would sell itself on word of mouth, merit of gameplay, and usually the fact that the box shots on the back the screenshots on the back looked better for the version that you were looking to buy than on the other versions. Classic example is like Defender of the Crown. The Amiga version looked like a movie at the time. The C64 version looked pretty good. The IBM version looked like crap. And they had all the versions on the back of the box. IBM graphics shown. Yeah, no. Obviously, they showed not the gameplay, but they showed the stills, the title screen. That sort of thing still happens today. And unfortunately, the fact that there are shorter and shorter development windows, there are more and more game development windows. Now you've got Christmas and you've got summer. Now you've got two windows you have to meet when you're developing games. And we can go into the 3D engine whoring thing on another show, because I'm going to interview in a coming show one of the developers at Gearbox. And you're going, hey, why does that name sound familiar? Gearbox was responsible for Half-Life. They're also responsible for the very successful Tony Hawk series. We're going to have one of their developers on the show, and we're going to ask him a battery of different questions, but we're going to have him talk about why Half-Life is arguably the best first-person shooter ever made, and why, even though it was based on the Quake engine, which we all know is like sacrilege to me, how they managed to pull it off, and some of their own particular stories that go along behind that. And we're going to talk to him, and I think he's got a different conception of how this whole engine whoring thing works. He hates that expression, by the way. He's probably going to kill me when he hears the show. But suffice to say that it's a different era now. There's no such thing as a classic game anymore. From about the PlayStation on, there really isn't a path for a classic game anymore. The kids growing up on PlayStation, in 20 years, they're not going to remember a classic game from the PlayStation. They're not going to remember a classic game or a game from the Nintendo 64. Most people have already forgot about the N64. I could tell you the N64 had one of the greatest games ever made, Mario Kart 64. Often imitated, over and over again. But Mario Kart on the N64 was perfection, and they deserve the props for that. But, Mario Kart's not going to be what's remembered, In fact, I don't think there'll be a lot remembered, and that's unfortunate. Video games do not hold the importance for today's generation as they did for our generation. And I think that's an important point to make. What will happen? What will happen with this show when I've talked about everything and there's really no more consoles and there's no more classic gaming stuff to talk about, because there really isn't any classic gaming anymore. You can say, isn't 16-bit classic? Well, it is and it isn't. Well, I've managed to prattle on almost the whole show about this. Wow.
Here's a great interview from the past, right here on the best of Retro Gaming Radio.
This month we feature an interview with Warren Davis, the mastermind behind Q-Bert, along with Joust 2 and the Laserdisc video game Us vs. Them. Warren Davis is a fantastic interview. We had a lot of fun with him. He was a good sport on a lot of things, and it's a great interview. Stick around.
This is Shane R. Monroe with Retro Gaming Radio at the Classic Gaming Expo 2003. I'm here with Warren Davis, the creator of Q-Bert. So if you are listening to the show and you do not know who this man is, turn the show off now. Because once again, you shouldn't be listening to begin with. Warren was also responsible for Joust 2.
I wouldn't say responsible, although I did work on it.
You did work on it, and Us vs. Them.
That is correct.
Which, if I remember, it's a Laserdisc game, right?
That's right.
All right. So naturally, we got to talk about Q-Bert.
Sure.
Give us a little background on how good times were for you in the 60s to bring forth Q-Bert.
It's fun. Sadly, I did not partake in the Summer of Love. And
where in the world did you get an idea for some thing with a big old nose, cussing all the time, jumping on some cubes?
It's really fun. I did not create the character of Q-Bert.
Okay.
That was created by a guy named Jeff Lee, who was a very, very talented video artist. Jeff Lee was like, pretty much the guy doing graphics at Gottlieb back in the early days. Gottlieb was mostly a pinball company. They transitioned to video with a couple of games they bought from Japan. Then they brought in Tim Skelly, who did Reactor for them, and he was there sort of as a guru to sort of show us how to make a video game. And then they started hiring all these other people, myself included, to sort of create a video game staff. And Jeff Lee was like the artist. He was like the only guy around for a while doing graphics. And he was absolutely amazing. What he could do with the limited number of pixels just would astonish you. Before Q-Bert, another guy was working on a superhero game. So sort of the concept was loosely based on Superman 2, where Superman was fighting like 3 villains.
Right.
And and it was actually there were 2 buildings on the very sides of the screen. The superhero would fight and fly in the center of the screen, and on the ground there were little pedestrians walking. These people were like 5 or 6 pixels high, and they all had personalities. It was unbelievable. That's just an idea of what Jeff Lee could do. And he had created a whole bunch of characters for a video game idea that he had, and he created Q-Bert as the player character. And the reason he had that nose was to shoot things through it.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so the idea was that this is a character that would shoot boogers through his nose. The boogers. So Jeff had come up with the snots and boogers idea, and
Q snot.
And I was looking for something to do as a video game, and I didn't really have anything in mind, because back then people didn't sit down and design video games really. You had some concept, you explored the concept. It was very experimental. So another guy whose name is Kan Yamamoto, and he is known for doing Mad Planets. That's the game he did. But he was working with this Escher-like cube pattern on the screen, and I was walking by one day, and I saw the screen filled with these Escher cubes, and I thought, that's kind of interesting, because in my mind's eye, I saw sort of this pyramid of cubes, and I was fairly new. I had helped out this other programmer doing the superhero game on some very few routines, but I needed to teach myself stuff like gravity and randomness were 2 concepts that I didn't really know how to program. So I thought, here's this pyramid of cubes, and if a ball bounced and hit the top, it would have one of 2 places to go. And in fact, every time it landed, it would have one of 2 places to go. And with one byte, a byte of data, each bit would be a random decision of which way you should go. And I thought, let me try and program this as an experiment. So I programmed just balls falling down this pyramid of cubes, then dropping off into oblivion, and there was no game idea. I was just doing this as an experiment. And then I thought, let me put a player character in there. So I went to Jeff, and he had all these characters that he had designed for Snots and Boogers, and I said, do you mind if I use this orange guy as the player? He said, yeah, no, go ahead. So I put that guy in, and we made him bounce up and down. I got it working.
So funny.
Yeah, and it really just evolved. The game literally evolved. Every time we got to one step, we said, what's the next step? Back then the programmer was the designer, because the programmer was the guy who made it all happen. But I did rely a lot on Jeff for input, and also from Dave Field, who did the sounds, and he was inspired. Dave was amazing. We had this phoneme chip. It was a speech chip that could play different phonemes of human sound. Well, he didn't like the way the speech sounded. If you actually tried to string together something, it was very monotone. It was just horrible. So he had the idea of having it play random phonemes, and that's what Q-Bert spoke in, random phonemes. And it's one of the things that made Q-Bert so lovable and gave him a personality. But that was all Dave's idea. The idea for changing the colors of the tops of the cubes came from Ron Waxman. Ron was our VP of engineering. Ron was this really, really imposing guy. He was very big. He had kind of like squinty eyes. He had a Van Dyke beard, always smoked cigars, and he never seemed to smile. And when you got to know him, he was a pussycat. But, not knowing him, you were just terrified
Scare
of this
the hell
guy.
out of it, yeah.
And one thing he would do late at night, like if we were working late, he would just kind of sit behind you. He was literally behind
He'd vulture you.
and just watch you.
Yeah.
So, you're trying to code and you hear this breathing, behind you. And I remember I was programming and I don't know, I was, playing the game, balls are bouncing, Q-Bert's jumping. He wasn't called Q-Bert. Some guy is bouncing or jumping around this pyramid. And I hear this voice behind me go, "What if the colors change when he lands on it?" And I was like, hey, that's a great idea. So I started programming that in, and then, honestly, a lot of my role model for the game was Pac-Man.
Really?
Yeah, and I always, people thought Q-Bert was a very original game. I'm very, honored that they think that, but a lot of the basic overlying themes of Q-Bert were based on Pac-Man. One thing was you had a joystick and no buttons.
Right. Okay.
You maneuvered and you tried to get away from something that was chasing you, in my case that was Coily the snake.
Right.
In Pac-Man you had the tunnels that you can escape from the ghosts.
Right.
In Q-Bert it's the discs. So.
Yeah, that's a really loose. I mean, I can almost take any game and make it sound like Pac-Man in that respect.
That's like saying Commando's based on Robotron because it's a guy shooting. Yeah.
Well, for what it's worth, though, that is
that's interesting.
Those are the things I had in my mind as I was trying to come up with the
basic mechanics.
So you're thinking Pac-Man while making Q-Bert.
Right.
Interesting.
Well, I do have one question.
Sure.
I do know that the name for Q-Bert came towards the end of development.
The very end, yeah.
Wasn't the original title was going to be what's on the side of the cat, which is the cuss words kind of thingy?
Yeah, what did you guys call that?
Well, we didn't call it anything.
That was the name of the game.
That was it.
Okay, nobody working on the game seriously believed that was going to ever happen. But Howie Rubin was our VP of marketing. And Ron and Howie literally were the overseers of the video department. They grew it, they created it, and Howie was a really interesting guy. He was very outgoing, very colorful. We used to work in this manufacturing plant in Bensonville, Illinois, when we were starting up. And it was empty. We weren't manufacturing anything. So we had thousands of square feet just empty. Howie was the kind of guy that would come in the middle of a day when we're all working and go, "All right, everybody, stop working. We're going into the plant and we're going to play football." And he would make everybody go out into this empty area and start throwing a football around in the middle of the day. That was Howie Rubin. Wonderful guy. And it was his idea to call the game or whatever you wanted to call it. And, I know that I personally thought he was insane. And I think most of everybody else thought he was insane. And we said, well, how are you going to pronounce it?
Yeah,
how
exactly.
are people going to talk about it? He goes, they'll find a way. If this game is as good as we know it is, they'll find a way. So we actually printed up a bunch of these marquees with the gibberish swear word on the marquees.
I've actually seen a cap with the gibberish.
That's correct.
That's how I found out about it.
People always ask me how many. I don't know how many were made. I have no idea. I have one, but I don't know how many there are floating out there. But and they went out on test that way. But at some point he got. I don't even know what changed his mind, quite honestly. But we did eventually, realize that that wasn't going to work, or whatever the reason. We changed it to a real name. And the naming of Q-Bert. See, first off, I never thought of a name. I'm not really good at that. I always called it the Cube Game.
Cube Game.
That was it. The Cube Game. Really boring. Really uninteresting. Well, we went around the office and we had everybody give their suggestions of what the name of the game should be. And we had a list of probably 50 or 60 names.
Really?
And they were all pretty inane, and I don't remember too many of them. There was one I remember that stuck in my mind for some reason because I think it was just so ridiculous. It was Arnie Aardvark. I think it was, somebody suggested that because of the nose.
Right.
And I thought, okay, no. But we had a meeting. We all sat together. It was myself and Howie and Ron, Jeff, Dave. I'm imagining who was there, who would have been there, because I don't really remember exactly. Rich Tracy was our art director. Bill Jacobs was a director of engineering. There were a bunch of people I'm sure were there. probably that 8 or 10 guys sitting in a room talking about what the name of this game should be. And I remember at one point, sort of like having a little out-of-body experience of like there's like 10 grown men in a room, vehemently discussing, what the name of this weird little character should be, and it was just insane.
It's supposed to be spitting boogers and snot.
Yeah, boogers.
Snots and boogers was out of...
It's called snots.
Since he wasn't shooting out of his nose, that really wasn't seriously considered.
What made you decide to not have him shoot anything out of his nose?
Well, honestly, I didn't want to deal with the programming difficulty of it.
Fair enough.
I wanted, something simple. It was my first game. I didn't want to overburden myself with trying to do anything too fancy. I really wanted to keep it simple. And because of the pyramid, landscape, shooting out of your nose was...
you couldn't hit anything, really.
It wasn't clear what you would hit or how you would aim. And I really wanted the controls to be simple. In fact, that was another one of my criteria was I wanted a game that I could play while holding a drink in my other hand. So...
Why didn't you just get rid of the nose?
What?
Why didn't you just get rid of or change the nose?
You know what? Jeff created the character, and we all liked the character, and I don't think we ever even considered that.
Oh,
interesting.
Okay. Or put hands on him, or no?
It seemed more interesting to us to just leave him the way he was and have people go,
what the hell?
What is that for?
What the hell?
Well, you start adding the things together, the Escher cubes and the funky noises and balls bouncing, and then you throw this orange guy with a huge schnauzer, and that's when you start thinking that you watched way too much Sid and Marty Krofft growing up.
Maybe. And you know what? And really, we didn't think about it at all. It was just, we were just trying to have some fun and do something that we would enjoy, So anyway, the name Q-Bert came about in that meeting where somebody suggested Q-Bert with an H. And
Q-Bert.
And, just like, hey, he looks like a Hubert. I don't know why.
Interesting.
And then somebody said, oh, wait a minute. What about Q-Bert with a C? So you have C-U-B-E-R-T. So you have the cube thing.
Right.
And people go, hey, I think we're on to something here.
Yeah.
And then somebody else said, wait a minute, what about Q, the letter Q-Bert? And we were all like, yes. And then it was with a dash, Q-Bert. And then the last thing was, no, make that dash an asterisk. Yes, we've got it.
It really was that goofy, huh?
No, we didn't jump up like that, but I'm exaggerating. But
you knew when it clicked.
But you guys did say yay.
It really did feel like it clicked. That is absolutely true. We just all in agreement looked at it and said, that's it. Yeah.
So were you guys like Atari, where if you guys were working on the game and everybody was playing it when you came to work in the morning that it was going to be a hit? Did you have that kind of
thing? We did
going?
have a sense with Q-Bert. People did enjoy playing Q-Bert while it was being developed. And we did have a sense it was going to be really popular. And that's why they jumped on the marketing and the merchandising before it was released.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they really knew it was going to be big.
Well, smart people.
Was Q-Bert the first basically slightly turned controls to give you the four-way that went in and basically instead of going up, down, left, and right, it went...
Yeah, that was revolutionary. I'm not sure if it came out before or after Zaxxon, because Zaxxon was another thing that was sort of like a pseudo 3D,
right?
And you had a different perspective than normal. So I do remember people coming over to me because I was very adamant about the controls, and they seemed completely obvious to me. I mean, he's jumping in physically on the screen, he's jumping in a diagonal direction. I didn't, think there was any problem, but people would come up while I was developing it and go, why don't you change the thing to be up, down, left, and right? And I'd be like, well, how is that going to work?
Yeah.
And they'd be like, but it's so much simpler. And I'd be like, how? And they'd be like, well, all the other games, this is too confusing. And I'd be like, but no, that's the way it's got to be. I think part of the problem might have been that when I was developing it, we didn't have a cabinet.
Right.
Basically what I had was a square plastic bucket. Think large Tupperware.
An actual bucket.
It was like large Tupperware, like about 8 inches by 6 inches, and about 5 or 6 inches deep. It was upside down, and the joystick was mounted on the bucket. So, and I had a monitor sitting here disconnected, and so I think that confused people because it wasn't mounted on a control panel. So, people just assumed that the joystick would go in the direction of the vertical and horizontal of the bucket. And they had to rotate it slightly and whatever. I don't know. But I was very adamant about the directions of that joystick, and it stayed throughout the game.
Whose idea was the pinball knocker?
The pinball knocker was the idea of a guy named Rick Ty. He was one of our technicians, and avid game player, and he knew a lot about pinball machines. And he said, what about sticking a pinball knocker in this cabinet? And when Q-Bert, hits the bottom, bam. And we were all like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Let's give it a shot. I did not like the quality of the sound because it sounded too much like a knock, and it didn't sound like a thud. And I really wanted something like sound like a sack of potatoes, hitting soft dirt. So what we tried was we took a little piece of foam, a little black foam, stuck it on the side of the cabinet where the thing hit. Lo and behold, it was the absolute perfect sound. But sadly, from a manufacturing standpoint, they didn't want to go into the labor to make sure that somebody would find that spot inside the cabinet, place it, and do that for the manufacturing run. So it never happened. We just left it with the knock, and I was always disappointed. But you know what? People over the years think it's one of the coolest things.
Yes, it is.
Absolutely. It's like a signature item for the game. I think there was one other game that used that pinball knocker, and maybe you know what it is.
Offhand, I don't.
There was some other game that used. What was the other game? There was some other game that used a pinball knocker.
I don't know.
And I thought only Q-Bert is the only other game I've seen that used this, and I can't remember now.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Oh well.
So now, I know you've been asked this one, so we're gonna cover some common ground here.
Sure.
The speech samples.
Uh-huh.
Did you purposefully remove any possible speech patterns that could have accidentally been put together to basically tell the player to go F themselves?
This is the truth. Whether people believe me or not, I can't say. But again, Dave Thiel, our sound guy, was the guy who programmed the random phonemes. And they were truly, completely random.
So it is absolutely possible for me to go over and play Q-Bert and have him tell me to go F myself.
Yeah, I don't think there was a way to, really prevent a lot of things, but the likelihood of that happening is just so slim. And I won't say that my answer is the definitive one. You could talk to Dave Thiel about that someday, but my understanding is that they are just random. He's not programmed to say anything, and he's capable of saying anything.
How many syllables does he say?
It's phonemes, and I'm not sure how many there are. But it was a speech chip that was based on, the human language. So, I think, I'm not sure exactly how many, something in the order of 20.
There was a total of 20 of them that were available?
I don't know. I don't have a definitive answer.
No, that's fair enough. I mean, just a ballpark. I mean, is it hundreds or is it
I'd
double
say
digits?
Between 20 and 40 is about how many phonemes there are.
Gotcha. Okay. How does it feel to have a game that has been poured so many times? I mean, I could probably name 17 different variations of Q-Bert, and I'm assuming that you guys had no recourse to pursue any of them, or you just chose not to.
Well, I had no ownership of the Q-Bert game or character ever. Wow. I was an employee of Gottlieb.
Yeah.
They didn't have a
legal department?
Royalty. Thank you. They didn't have a royalty program at the time of Q-Bert. Although I did get a bonus. I got a generous bonus, and that was very nice. But it wasn't what I would have gotten if there was a royalty program in place. They did put a royalty program in place a couple of years later.
Can't believe they didn't give you a little action off of that.
Well, they gave me a little, but very little. But honestly, at the time, I was thrilled because this was my first game. It was very successful. It was very popular, and that was an enormous amount of gratification for me. The fact that people copied it was just flattering.
It was flattering to you?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't in the business to make money. I wasn't in the business to become wealthy. I never expected that. I expected that I would have some fun and maybe create something that I would enjoy. So,
did you hear that, Bill? Not everyone's in this for money. One of our avid listeners.
Yeah,
doesn't understand the concept of creative outlet.
Well, honestly, the only thing I've ever looked for in my entire career was, to be compensated in a way that I felt was fair.
Yeah.
And, I didn't feel a need to become, insanely wealthy. But honestly, I wouldn't have turned down more money.
Now, how many units of Q-Bert shipped? I mean, just ballpark. Do you have any ideas?
I honestly don't know. I really don't. I remember standing in that plant and just seeing tons of them, and that was overwhelming to me. But I really don't know what the final numbers ended up being. I have no idea.
And I assume you have one at home still.
I do have one. I have an engineering sample. So it doesn't actually have the final artwork. It has a different side panel, and I also have the the marquee that has the swearing instead of Q-Bert.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
The development of the characters, Slick, Sam, Coily, Wrong Way, where do those come from?
Well, the characters all came from Jeff Lee. He designed them all. And I'm actually, when it comes to a lot of the details, I'm not really sure whose idea was what. I don't remember whose idea it was to turn them upside down and have them come in from the other angles.
That's almost disturbing.
Yeah, that might have been Jeff's idea.
That noise, you can tell if you're still in contact with a sound guy, that sound is almost subliminally disturbing to me. It's like they did with The Shining, the movie The Shining. That music they play at the beginning, they purposefully mess with you.
Yeah. Again, random phonemes, but at a lower pitch.
Yeah, it just makes my hair almost stand up thinking about it.
Yeah.
But
then we needed again. All the characters served some sort of gameplay purpose. So Slick and Sam, green guys falling down. We needed somebody to thwart Q-Bert in his quest to change the colors. So they were thrown in there.
Was there ever a story developed for Q-Bert? Why he was changing the colors? Anything like that?
I didn't develop one. I don't know of one. Jeff might have come up with something like that. I honestly don't remember. And honestly, it wasn't important to me at that time because this was at a time where Space Invaders didn't have a story. Pac-Man didn't really have a story. Games just they weren't really necessary. But it was at a time where people were starting to think in terms of story with video games. But that really wasn't where my interest was. I was interested in the look and feel of the game itself.
How did you feel when it became a cartoon?
I was bemused, I guess would be the word. No, honestly, it never occurred to me that somebody would want to turn that into a cartoon. And once I got past that, it didn't occur to me how someone could turn that into a cartoon.
Well, they're ready to do a Pac-Man movie. Q-Bert's going to be next. If Pac-Man
Q-Bert's next.
If Pac-Man makes $20 million, they're going to come to your house and get Q-Bert.
Well, we'll find out. I don't know.
Well, does Gottlieb? Gottlieb is still around.
No, Gottlieb is not around. Gottlieb was bought by Columbia Pictures.
Oh, great! Hell no. That means it's guaranteed to happen.
There's going to be a Q-Bert movie.
There'll be a Q-Bert movie.
And at some point they were owned by Coca-Cola. But then Coca-Cola got rid of them. And then Columbia Pictures was bought by Sony. So Q-Bert and all of those properties are owned by Sony now.
Which explains why there was that 3D Q-Bert. I mean, not 3D. What's that?
Q-Bert Cubes, I think?
No, not Q-Bert Cubes.
No, that was Q-Bert's Cubes was actually an arcade game done at Gottlieb about probably a few months after the sequel that was never released.
I was going to ask you about that next, but I'm talking about the Q-Bert that was done for the PlayStation.
The Hasbro. Oh, there was a Q-Bert for the PlayStation, and then Hasbro did one for the PC.
And there was one for the Super Nintendo.
Right.
But it was exactly the PlayStation.
I think Q-Bert 3,
yes,
I think it was called. And I believe Jeff Lee worked on that, on the graphics on that.
Oh, that's cool.
But I had nothing to do with it. I had nothing to do with the Hasbro one, although I did talk to some Hasbro people while it was being developed, but I wasn't involved in any sort of decisions or any of the gameplay.
What do you think of those?
Have you played it?
Well, I have played it, and in some regards I like it, but honestly, I had started thinking about doing a 3D version of Q-Bert and how I would do it, and there were a lot of things I would have done differently. I mean, more power to them. They did it their way, but I just
don't hold back. Tell us what you really think.
No, it's
do you feel like Q-Bert is yours as far as?
Do you feel possessive of him?
Yeah. Do you feel possessive?
From a creative standpoint, yeah, kind of. I mean, I share that with Jeff Lee and Dave Thiel. I've always thought of the three of us as a group as the creators of Q-Bert.
Because we asked this question with David Crane with Pitfall, and he's like, no.
I'm trying to figure out. We try to figure out how people that are very responsible for pioneering things like Q-Bert and Pitfall, Pac-Man, things like that. How you cannot be attached to that? I mean, other than the fact that you were just an employee, I know, and you weren't, it wasn't making you money hand over fist. But later on,
yeah.
I mean, how do you not develop an emotional attachment to something that has obviously made such an impact on so many people?
Well, I'm grateful for that, certainly, and that is the emotional impact it's had on me. I'm not in any way bitter about the money part of it. I mean, if I was poor and living on the streets, I bet I'd be real bitter.
Well, it's not so much the money aspect. It's what identifies you. when somebody goes Warren Davis, oh, that's the Q-Bert guy. Like with David Crane, it's like, oh, that's the Pitfall guy. But if you go to David Crane right now and he goes, I am not the Pitfall guy.
He doesn't want to be associated.
Exactly.
So, well, no, you know what? Well, certainly, I would not define my life by Q-Bert. But you know what? If people define me by Q-Bert, that's their thing, and that's fine. I'm not. There are certainly worse ways to be defined. You know. Hitler comes to mind.
Well, let me put it into perspective. This is how we kind of did it with David. Let's say they took Q-Bert and turned him into a first-person shooter.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's not some movies actually comes out.
Yeah. Let's say that they take Q-Bert and they totally bastardize him into something that you would have never ever wanted. Worse than the Hasbro stuff.
Right.
And they said, they put on the package Warren Davis' Q-Bert. Q-Bert shooter.
Q-Bert buying the
and you went out to Walmart and saw that on the shelf.
Yeah.
Would that bother you?
Yes, if my name was on it, it would bother me. If my name, and that's very unlikely, if not impossible. But if my name wasn't on it, and somebody did that with Q-Bert, well, it's not my property, and would I be disappointed? Absolutely. I wouldn't want to see Q-Bert, in something that I don't think is successful or proper for him. But again, it's not my place, so I would personally be disappointed, but. I also understand that there are business aspects to this, and I don't have the say-so to say no.
That's fair enough.
Fair enough. Have you played? What is the best version of Q-Bert that you've ever played that's not the arcade version or emulated, like on a port to a console or a computer?
That's really tough. I've only played the ports in a very cursory way. My favorite Q-Bert is the one that was not released.
Figures.
When I made it, which I don't know, faster, harder, more challenging Q-Bert.
Right.
I don't know if you're familiar with that.
We are very familiar.
But that is my favorite, honestly, and I'm thrilled beyond words that it's actually out there for people to play, because it literally sat in my Q-Bert cabinet for 15 years, and as far as I know, I have the only set of ROMs of it.
So you
You're the one who dumped it?
For MAME?
Yes, I gave those to the MAME guys. So maybe I shouldn't be saying this. Maybe there's maybe
you can say that.
No, trust me, you can say that.
You can say that.
For those people, I mean, there are a lot of people who don't know the difference. I mean, a lot of Q-Bert fans that don't know that exists.
Right.
What are the differences? Just a summary.
Let me give you that. When Q-Bert came out, some people that I worked with at Gottlieb internally thought it was too hard. So I kept making it easier and easier. And when it got out into the arcades, when we did play test all these games, we would put it in an arcade and sit there and watch people play it. A lot of times people would jump right off and die, and they'd be frustrated and they'd walk away. But occasionally, people wouldn't, and then people would watch and they'd see how it's done. But there was still a feeling that it was too hard. So I did make it easier, and then when it was out and popular for months, people really got really good at it, and you could play, forever on one port. So I felt a pressure, and there was a desire internally to do a sequel that was maybe a little bit harder. So, they said, really, we wanted to. I said, well, what do you want in a sequel? And they said, well, we want something that's faster, harder, and more challenging. So I said, all right, I'm going to make a game called Faster, Harder, More Challenging Q-Bert, and that's what I did. So what's different about it? First of all, it starts off much faster. The original game started slow and got gradually faster. This starts off at a nice clip. The other thing is the discs on the sides of the pyramid are not fixed. They move. They will actually...
I never noticed that.
They flash and they'll move up a step. So you sort of have to keep aware of where they're going. The other element that happens later on is that Slick and Sam, when they come down and start jumping, rather than just turn a color back to its original color, they change the top of a square to a pattern that Q-Bert cannot change by jumping on it. Only coyly jumping on that will change it back to a
that's
color.
evil.
Oh, damn.
So the new element of the game is that you have to not only, lure coyly to a disc, you have to get him to follow you over any of those squares. So
that's not right.
It is very challenging.
That is not right.
It is very challenging. And also the progression of the game was changed slightly so that things that used to happen in every level change every round. Play the game. You'll fit. And then there's a new character called Q-Bertha. And that was just because we had this idea of a female Q-Bert who really, as opposed to Coily, who wants to kill Q-Bert, Q-Bertha wants to smother him with love.
Wants to gets in with him.
She's a female purple, and she basically takes the place of Coily in the game, and I don't think there's really any difference. I don't remember any other difference other than the fact that she's a different character. She comes in later. And there are bonus rounds, which I don't think the original had.
No.
There are bonus rounds where you have like 20 seconds to change as many colors as you can. And then you have a million Slick and Sams falling down like a rainfall. And you have to stop them, and again, they're changing colors back, and you're changing colors, and then it's like whatever the board looks like after 20 seconds, you get points based on that. Yeah. I thought
So
that was fun.
were there no operator difficulty levels in Q-Bert? I would think that if it was too hard, then they would just give levels and let you turn it up and down.
There in both games there were some operator adjustments where you can change the difficulty from easy to hard, and there were a number of things that part of that was in the timing and the speed of the game, and part of that was the points at which you got an extra man. So that you'd get an extra man at a lower point level. That makes the game easier.
How much code base change was there from original Q-Bert and the faster, harder, more challenging Q-Bert?
Not that much, honestly. We pretty much kept the game the same. We did change a few things. We added Q-Bertha, like I say. We added but it really wasn't that big of a change. And I think it only took me maybe 2 months to get all of the changes incorporated in and put it out on test. And it was put out on test, but it was put out on test, like maybe 3 or 4 months after the original. So people were still mastering the original, and they felt, you know what, the time isn't right for this, and they shelved it, and then they never came back and unshelved it. It stayed forgotten for years.
So what about Q-Bert Cubes?
Q-Bert Cubes I have absolutely nothing to do with.
Nothing at all?
Nothing at all.
Wow.
There was another programmer. He was a junior programmer. He started out after I did, and his name was Neil Bernstein, a really wonderful guy and a talented guy. And he said, of course, management came to me and said, listen, we do want to do another Q-Bert game. And I was of the mind, you know what, I've done Q-Bert. I want to move on to other things. There were a lot of areas that I wanted to explore, and I just didn't feel a need to do another Q-Bert game. And Neil was interested, and I basically gave him my blessing. I said, more power to you, good luck, whatever you want to do. And he did it.
Interesting. And how was Q-Bert Cubes? Was that actually released? I don't even remember actually seeing an actual cabinet.
Yes, it was. I don't know how many they made, and I honestly don't think it was that successful, but it was finished and released, yes.
There was a ColecoVision cartridge.
What?
There was a ColecoVision cartridge.
Q-Bert Cubes?
Yes, I had
Really?
it. I had it.
Wow.
Interesting. Wow.
There you go.
I think the ColecoVision port was like one of the most amazing ports for the time.
I agree. I had a ColecoVision at home at the time, and yeah, I thought it was a really faithful port. Very, very impressed.
Are you a video game player as well as a developer?
Not as much as I used to be, it's a rare video game that grabs my attention.
What is something that grabs your attention?
Well, there was a game for the PC, an adventure game called the Pandora Directive. Mm-hmm. It was part of a series of games featuring Tex Murphy, a character called Tex Murphy.
Yeah.
I thought it sounded familiar.
I love that game, the Pandora Directive. I mean, when that game came out, I played it from start to finish, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. To me, it was the perfect game. It was everything a game should be. It had a story. It got you immersed and involved. It had humor. It had action. It had thinking. I love that game. I loved a lot of the LucasArts Star Wars games, the original ones. I loved Myst and Riven. Those really intrigued me. I'm not a Twitch gamer. I really like adventure games. I like games with story. I like games with puzzle solving. A lot of the games I found, though, did fall into sort of a mediocre category. They had some really good stuff in them, but nothing to really elevate them beyond everything else. Oh, another game I loved was called Shivers, which was sort of a horror-themed game. Man,
I remember Shivers.
Love that game. I love that game.
These are games that we never had PCs fast enough to play.
Exactly right. I was still back on Amiga, I think, back then, so I didn't get to play any of that stuff.
No, I still have hopes that. I've been working in the console market now.
Is that what you're doing now? Then?
Yeah.
Console
and
development?
it was a big transition for me because I really didn't have a lot of 3D experience, but I picked it up, and I actually found out that the knowledge that I did have was pretty applicable to modern games. And I learned a lot on the way, and now, I'm actually very excited about the game I'm working on now, although I really can't talk about it.
Of course not. Who do you work for now, or can you tell us?
It's a very small developer called Equinox.
I've heard of Equinox.
Yeah, me too. Do you have a publisher that you're working through?
Well,
probably can't tell me that
I
either.
shouldn't talk about it, yeah.
Okay.
What have you worked on?
What have you done before that?
Well, I'll run through them all. Of course, Q-Bert and Us Versus Them at Gottlieb. And Us Versus Them...
Yeah, let's talk about that while we're there.
I've been thinking a lot about Us Versus Them lately. I was always proud of that game, and the interesting thing about Us Versus Them is it was sort of very different from anything out there. It was a Laserdisc game with computer graphic overlay, but we actually had actors, and we actually shot scenes, and there was an actual story. And we shot flying footage. I actually went along with Dennis Nordman. Dennis Nordman was another guy who designed it, and Rich Tracy and I were really the three sort of designers of the game, and they had the concept. I sort of joined the team, and we all worked on it together. Jeff Lee did the video graphics. Dave Field did the sounds. Dennis and I went out and actually did some flying with the guys who were shooting flying footage. The interesting thing about Us Versus Them is that it would switch angles. So some levels you'd be behind your fighter plane. Some it would be side scrolling. Some you would sort of be above looking down. There were 5 different sort of angles that you could play at, and I've been just thinking about it a lot because my memories of it are old. I've never seen it. There's a version of it on MAME, but without the Laserdisc underlay, and that really makes the game work.
Right.
So you really can't experience it without that. But we had a full orchestral score with an actual orchestra. It was composed and conducted by Dave Zabriskie, who is to my mind, a musical genius. A guy who was working at Gottlieb and then later worked at Williams. But it was a phenomenal game. I'd love to see an actual working cabinet.
We had one last year. That's too bad. There was one here last year.
Oh, you're kidding. Man, I would have loved to have seen that.
Yeah, I don't think I had a chance to play it either.
One of my favorite things in that game is at the very end if you play that game all the way through, we have this actor who plays the President of the United States talking to you and congratulating you on finishing the game. Now, he's sitting at a desk. In front of a desk are the letters of the alphabet. So he gives you this speech and then just segues into saying, to enter your initials in the high score table, move the joystick to select your... It was like so... I just found it so amusing that here's this guy, this presidential guy, congratulating you on saving the world and then telling you to enter your initials in the high score table.
That would be funny.
It was great. That was a great game.
Classic. I've always wondered about the computer overlay Laserdiscs games. They almost seem like they were all a desperate attempt to cash in on Dragon Slayer Space Ace sort of thing. And I've always wondered from a development standpoint, was that really what was going on, or was it simply a matter of, hey, here's some new technology, let's see what we can do with it?
It was the latter. Honestly, I wouldn't say there was anything desperate about it. When Laserdiscs came out, people started to go, hey, this is a valid thing that we can put in video games to get movie quality graphics. There was nothing desperate about it. We spent quite some time developing our hardware. A hardware engineer named Dave Pfeiffer converted our hardware, which was originally done by a guy named Jun Yum. Both of these guys, very talented hardware engineers at Gottlieb. And they came up with this Laserdisc scheme, and we opted to go with computer overlay the computer overlay as opposed to Dragon's Lair, which just basically
was all animated.
It was all animated. And then we did Mach 3, and Mach 3 turned out to be very successful. It really was just trying to exploit some new technology in a cool way. That was really what our goal was. And then we just tried to take it another step with Us Versus Them by adding story elements and different angles. The sad thing about Us Versus Them, as I always remember, is that it came out at a time where arcade operators started to realize that, if you kick the side of a cabinet, which apparently happened a lot, the Laserdisc would skip. The cushioning or the shock absorption qualities of that original player in the cabinets were not up to snuff for field use. So people were losing a lot of games. People would ask for their money back. They would break down a lot. The operators weren't happy. The operators organization, they started to turn down their orders. They started to cancel orders. And this was happening all the time that Us versus Them came out. So
right. Yeah, I heard that was a problem for everybody, though.
Yeah, exactly. But
everybody was having that.
And Us versus Them, I'll never forget this. Us versus Them went into an arcade on test. It was the number one game for something like 12 weeks.
Really?
It was the number one game in this arcade for weeks after week after week. And we couldn't sell them because we actually had a lawsuit. Gottlieb had a lawsuit against our distributors, or vice versa. And because of this whole Laserdisc fiasco. So it was just bad timing. Very sad.
And so how many did you guys do? There was Mach 3 and then Us vs. Them, and that was it?
That's right. And I don't know how many Us vs. Thems actually got produced, but it was a very small number. We could not sell them. People just didn't want to buy them. Because all Laserdisc games... Yeah, and again, like you say, it wasn't just Gottlieb. Across the board...
Oh, everybody had problems.
Laserdisc games just died. And it's sad because I think a few years later, they solved those problems, and they would have been robust enough to stay in those cabinets, but... operators were burned, and they didn't want to try it again.
That's crazy. Well, let's talk about Joust 2.
Okay. Probably a short conversation.
Maybe, maybe not. How did you get involved with that?
Joust 2 is being programmed by another programmer entirely. He wasn't doing a really good job. I guess he was behind in his schedule, and basically what happened was I and another programmer at Williams were asked to basically come on board and finish the game up. And I don't know if he quit or was fired, but he was no longer there and they needed to finish the game. So my involvement was really minimal. I came in and just sort of, helped to get the game in shape to go out the door. That was it.
So you didn't do any of the design concepts or anything else?
No.
You were just a cleanup crew?
I call myself a supplemental programmer on that.
Yeah. What about the other guy that worked with you? How much of the project was complete when you got to it?
I'm guessing maybe 75%. Maybe,
quite a bit.
Maybe, yeah. It was. There was a core there, but there was a lot of stuff that was problematic, and it wasn't ready to go out.
And I've actually never seen an actual Joust 2 machine. Was it a very limited run? Was it too late?
Where you live, in a cave?
What? Dude, I never saw a Joust 2 machine.
Technically you have. Do you remember when I took you to the Pac-Man arcade?
There was a Joust 2 there?
There was a Joust 2 there. You walked right past it.
Made an impression on you, didn't it?
Well, no,
I played the crap out of it. I like it.
That's funny. I didn't
it's
play
easier
it. Was
than
emulated.
Joust.
I can't really take much credit for it. And John Newcomer, who did the original Joust, was involved as a designer and artist.
It's a lot easier than the original Joust because you can change the horse to a Pegasus and all that kind of stuff, and it just seemed like it felt easier.
Yeah.
Well, how long were you at Williams?
I started at Williams, Gottlieb closed their doors, or Milestar, as they became known at that time, closed their doors in 84, I want to say, and I was out of the industry for about a year and a half. So it was probably, I think by 86, a headhunter called me, asked me if I was interested in getting back into the arcade industry, and I was very much. And I was really thrilled at working at Williams because of all the great games that came out of it.
Oh, yeah.
I was thrilled with, working with people like Eugene Jarvis and Larry DeMar. And at that time, Larry DeMar was pretty much working on pinball games. And it actually, the time I came to Williams was a time where the arcade industry was sort of dying. The heyday, that initial heyday of the early 80s and the late 70s was over. But we were about to enter into another era. And that's where I started working with video digitizers. Which, honestly, I have to say I'm sort of proud of that. That was my main contribution at Williams. I worked on Terminator 2. I was part of the team that did Terminator 2.
I love Terminator 2.
But that happened because I actually was working at Williams. We were developing a completely new system. It was going to be the next generation. Eugene Jarvis and I were working together. Eugene was pretty much designing it. He was like the idea guy. I wrote the display system. Eugene wrote the operating system. We had a great hardware guy, Mark Lafredo, who was designing the hardware, and it was a 256 color system.
It was very nice. It looked so cool.
And you could get really sort of almost true color graphics out of a 256 colors. Of course, all of the tools to reduce, there's a lot of algorithms to reduce colors down from true color to 256 colors.
Right.
Those were sort of in their infancy. They were only the crudest algorithms. Some of the cooler algorithms came along years later. But we used what we had, And we started to, once the system was developed, we started to develop 2 games. Eugene and Jack Hager, really talented artist who I think is a wonderful human being. We worked together on Terminator 2 and Revolution X. And Jack Hager, he's a guy that has his own huge history in the coin-op industry. Jack and Eugene were working on a game that became Narc.
Oh.
And I was teamed with John Newcomer, and we were working on a game that ultimately did not get released. And, that's a story that I need to be a little bit delicate about because there was some political stuff going on at the time. I won't get into the details of it because it's a very political story. I ended up quitting. I ended up leaving Williams.
Well, you can't stop now. Now you got us all interested. Come on, give us the light brown bag version here.
All right. Well, John Newcomer and I were working on this game. It was called USSA, I believe it was called.
Okay.
And the idea was that there was a Russian takeover of our country, and resistance fighters were fighting back.
Now, was this Terminator 2 style hardware?
No, similar, not entirely.
Okay.
It wasn't a multiplanar.
Not a gun game.
It wasn't a gun game.
Okay.
It was a game with 2 steering wheels.
Okay.
We went with a split screen so 2 players could play.
Cool.
And it was basically a tank game. So you had an overhead view. The enemies were in tanks, and the player was driving a flatbed truck with a missile launcher in the back.
Sweet. I'd play that now.
And you could shoot a missile launcher and steer it with your steering wheel.
Cool.
And hit the tanks. John Newcomer built models from model kits, and I don't know where he found these. McDonald's, 7-Eleven, houses, and we shot these with video cameras straight down. This was really amazing true color graphics. It looked like a photograph. And the tanks, it's all the same thing. And the flatbed truck, all from models. They looked awesome. And we brought this game pretty far along. But the idea was that each half of the screen scrolled independently.
Right.
So sometimes you might see the other player, sometimes you might not. There was some political backlash. I honestly couldn't tell you everything about it, but I will tell you that Steve Ritchie, who is a famous pinball designer.
Yes, of course.
And a wonderful guy. I got to say, I respect and love that guy tremendously. But at the time, he felt he was sticking his nose into the video department in ways that I didn't feel were quite appropriate. But of course, who was I? I was this snot-nosed guy from Gottlieb that did Q-Bert, and everybody else there were these classic Williams guys that have been there forever.
Right.
So, and John Newcomer was also a guy who, despite having success with Joust, Joust was not necessarily thought highly of at Williams while it was being developed. So,
really?
John Newcomer sort of was, I won't say he wasn't respected, but he was, he
was the division whipping boy.
He wasn't elevated to the place that somebody like Jarvis.
He was the black sheep.
Yeah, he was the black. He was the redheaded stepchild.
Okay. How is that? You made Joust and you're the bad guy.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I want to know.
I know. It's like,
I think I totally screwed the rest of my video game writing career.
Well, you know what? I mean, I hate to be the guy who made Baby Pac-Man at Midway. I would rather be the guy who made Joust. Oh, I just made that shitty game Joust, Sorry.
So go ahead.
Ultimately, what happened was, we felt really good about our game. Narc was developing on its own, and there was competition. That was the Williams way. There was some competition, and we basically lost. We didn't have the approval of upper management. I think part of it probably was that upper management did not want 2 games coming out at the same time competing with each other.
Right.
Eugene called me into his office. He said, "Hey, Warren, I'm sorry about your game being canceled. We would like you to do a football game. We have this football game we want to do.
High Impact?
It became High Impact eventually, yes. And he said, what do you think about doing that? And I was like, well, I'll tell you, Eugene, I'm not really interested in doing a football game. I'm not a big football fan. I'm not the right guy for it.
Right.
But thanks for offering it to me, and I'll come up with something else I want to do. So while I'm talking to Eugene, Ken Fidesna, who's the VP of Engineering, he phones Eugene. He goes, "You talking to Warren?" Eugene is, "Yeah." Well, I come on down to the office. We go to Ken's office.
Oh, hell.
Ken Fidesna goes, "So Warren, Eugene told you you're working on the football game,
Oh,
right?"
hell no. Here it comes.
So I got to feel bad for Eugene. I don't harbor any resentment about that, but he tried to play it delicately. It just didn't work out. And that was pretty much the moment where I knew I had to leave. I just felt like I wasn't treated with respect. And I did leave, and I went over to Premier Technology, which is the ex-Gottlieb pinball guys, a company run by Gil Pollock, and became their consultant to create a video game for them. That's a whole other story that I really don't want to talk to you. Just my voice is running out. But that's a story that could take, a couple of hours. But I did a game for Premier Technology. It was called in 1991 by Ken Fedesna at Williams saying, how would you like to come back?
Wow.
And I said, sure. And the game they were working on was Terminator 2. And they had a guy who left in the middle of the project, and they needed somebody to fill in who was experienced and knowledgeable. And I was thrilled to come back, and I had a great time working on that game.
That looks like it'd be way too much fun to work on.
It was a great experience in every way. Jack Hager, again, phenomenal artist. George Petro was the young kid coming up when NARC was being done. He helped out on NARC, and now he was taking the lead designer role on Terminator 2. I was a programmer. We had a third programmer named Bill Dabblestein, who was also a junior guy. It was his first game. And we had we just had a great time.
How did you guys handle video digitizing back then? I mean, now it's like you can go down to Walmart and buy a digitizer, but back then, video capture was like very experimental. How did you guys work with that?
Well, one of the things that I had sort of pioneered at Williams during my earlier stint there was video digitizing. And
I remember you'd said something about that. I was wondering how that worked.
We had a system. We were using a Targa board, which was a board by a company called True Vision.
Okay.
The original digitizer we had was something for the Amiga.
Hell no, DigiView. You guys had a DigiView, didn't you? With the pinwheel at the top of the camera
right.
pointing?
That's
Hell
right.
no, I still have one of those kicking around somewhere.
How insane was that? It did the job,
It
but
worked?
boy, very difficult to work with because of the wheel.
The color wheel sucked.
Targa board was nicer. You could take a camera and it digitized very nicely, but we did not have the speed on the computers to grab full frames and save them to disk. We just didn't have, it just wasn't possible. So what we could do was freeze frame a video or have somebody in a pose and digitize that. And they actually did that on NARC and High Impact Football. So they were using my video digitizing system all that period of time after I had left on their games.
Wow.
When I came back for Terminator 2, they were still using that, and I was like, oh my God, are you still using that horrible old system? So one of the things that I did was I sat down, I rewrote new software for the Targa, and it might have been the same, it might have been a newer Targa board, newer version, and it was a much more streamlined interface. It was much nicer. We still didn't have the speed we needed, but you could get much better quality, and you didn't have to freeze frame videotapes. You could let a tape run, and you could grab as fast as we could. We'd grab frames, and they ended up using that for Mortal Kombat. And
I thought the capture looked similar.
When those guys, when Ed Boon and John Tobias, were talking about more the kind of game they wanted to do, I was jazzed because to me that was the kind of game that needed to be done to show off this video digitizing. And
absolutely.
I was so proud of those guys because they really did use that to the absolute best effect. I mean, it was an awesome looking game. Groundbreaking for its time.
Absolutely. We consider that one of the all-time game ships.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's awesome.
And those guys, those two guys had the sensibility. All of the gameplay design decisions were them. And my contribution was the video digitization system.
That's really cool. I mean,
I have my hand in it, and I'm proud of that.
That's cool. Did you get credited or anything on it?
I actually got some bonus money for that game.
Really? Nice. Well, you should have gotten some. They made enough. It was enough.
It's actually kind of a funny story. When they were sort of done with the game, Ed Boon came into me one day in my office, and he said, "Hey, listen, Warren, we want to get this full screen digitized picture for our attract mode, but we don't have any memory. Could you write some sort of compression algorithm or decompression to get us to be able to fit it in memory?" And I had been playing around with some compression algorithms at the time, and I said, sure. So I said, sure, but you're going to have to give me royalties.
Nice.
Just joking around, really. And,
okay.
And I did give him that, and months later I got a royalty check. I was,
nice.
I don't know if that really was the reason or what, but that's
very cool. Now, did you guys did all your video capture from, I'm assuming, the tape that they sent over? I mean, you guys didn't actually have Arnie in there doing reshoots or anything, right?
Well, actually, we had we had a lot of reference footage. We had people on the set shooting reference footage for us.
Right.
So all of the sets we got from that. We had Linda Hamilton's stunt double available to us.
Wow.
And I did not go out there to do this, but I think Jack and George did go out there. And they actually had Robert Patrick for like a day, Eddie Furlong for a day.
Wow.
And Arnold's stunt double wearing an Arnold prosthetic mask.
Right, you abused him.
We actually had these people available to us on a blue screen to do whatever we needed, and that's how we got all of that.
Wow.
That's really Robert Patrick in the game.
That's way cool.
Yeah. At the very end, you have to play it to the end. Yeah.
That's way cool.
So it was very cool. And of course, who knew that the movie would be as big as it was? It was huge.
Oh yeah, it's still huge.
It is huge, and the game turned out great.
I agree. I think it's one of the coolest games ever.
Yeah.
Who came up with the concept? And this is just wild because I don't know if Operation Wolf uses the same technology. Who came up with the concept of putting a gun on a joystick instead of using a light gun?
I have absolutely no idea. I don't know anything about the origin of that piece of hardware, really.
But you had to read it, though. I mean, the code, or did somebody else have the code written before you came in?
Yeah, that was pretty much already done by the time I came on board. Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah,
cool. So, do you have anything you'd like to plug? A website, something that you're working on, or you just worked on that you'd like to see people learn about?
I don't really have anything to plug. I just don't. I'm thankful that people are interested in this stuff that I did 20 years ago. It's still astounding to me. I'm very glad to have been part of this industry and continue to be part of the industry. It's a lot of fun. What can I say? I'm having a good time.
Great. Well, thanks. Do you guys have anything?
I do.
Okay.
You worked on Revolution X also?
That's correct, right.
Where did the concept for that? By the way, I'm probably like one of the 10 people on this planet who play that game religiously.
Well, I play the crap out of Revolution X.
I'm probably like the only 2 people who bought it for the PlayStation.
Right.
But I was going to ask you.
Had the Amiga version.
Huh?
I had the Amiga version, I think.
Of Revolution X?
Yeah, I think it was Revolution X. I know I had T2 for the Amiga. Did you guys use Amigas in development, other than just for video capture stuff?
I never did, no, but I think some of the artists did use like Deluxe Paint and things on the Amiga for that.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, no, that's fine.
I just remembered
because my brain is kind of going.
Cylon style.
Well, I was going to say also, that's another game I use to benchmark when I'm playing MAME. Have you played it in MAME?
Have I played what?
Have you played Revolution X in MAME?
I haven't. I didn't know it was on MAME now.
It's in MAME, but I don't think it works 100%. If you go to the third level, what is that, the jungle? I can't remember what it is. If you go the route of the bus, I can never get past the bus.
The bus is my favorite. Because I was one that coded the helicopter SWAT van level in Terminator 2.
Uh-huh.
And I always loved that. I always found that to be incredibly fun. And we wanted to do something similar in Revolution X, so we came up with this bus. And it is hard. It's really, really hard.
Yeah, because you don't know everything to hit. Yeah. That's what happens to me. I'm going, okay, I've hit everything. Wait, I can hit this? Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But if you don't go the bus route, if you go the other way, you pick the other path, it crashes. You guys, is there some kind of encryption in Revolution X?
Or anything when they went in?
I couldn't even tell you. I don't remember. I really just don't know.
What do you think? What do you think of emulation in general? Are you a supporter?
I'm a total supporter of emulation. I think it's wonderful. I think again, these things without emulation. I mean, these things really have run their course money-wise. I don't think anybody really has any right to be upset about these games still being played for enjoyment by people. I'm very jazzed personally about it. I love the fact that these games are available to people just from a historical perspective, and I honestly wish somebody would get Us versus Them so you could you could see the actual Laserdisc footage and the video overlay. I'm waiting for somebody to emulate that.
Well, one guy has done Mach 3.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's based on MAME 63 or one of the MAMEs in the 60s. He figured out how to compress the MPEG. He got the MPEG of the video. So Mach 3 is in MAME. It's not in the official MAME. It's in the special Laserdisc MAME.
Wow.
The Daphne team is roaming around here. what's the deal with the? I think it's something to do with the core, huh? Why some games aren't emulated?
Yeah, because it requires a PC emulation.
Well,
In order
what
to
do you
do
know?
that.
What core? Do you remember what core Us versus Them ran on?
I have no idea. Because the concept of doing the computer overlay actually requires, I think, an 8088 or something emulator.
Well, that was Dragon's Lair. Well, some
Dragon's Lair
games.
2. Dragon's Lair 2 ran on a PC, but the problem is why they don't have Us versus Them and things like that in there is because they require some sort of an overlay that they haven't emulated that part yet.
Well, no. If you go to main, you can play the video graphics.
Oh.
Because the video graphics overlay was a pretty much standard Gottlieb hardware.
Gotcha.
But it did interface with the Laserdisc in some way. It sort of knew what frame it was on and kept in sync.
Right.
And that's the part that has to be emulated.
Interesting. I bet they just don't have the video. I bet that's the problem. They don't have access to the video, the Laserdisc.
It's possible.
Maybe.
I don't know. We'll have to
I'm
ask
sure there
them.
are a lot of technical obstacles to
snag
overcome.
Chip.
But
Hey, is that Chip over there on Dragon's Lair, isn't he? He's over playing Dragon's Lair right now. We should snag him. Most of the team that's developing the Laserdisc emulators here. So I mean, they've managed to get all sorts of stuff working.
that's awesome.
So-
Someday I'm sure they'll have it.
Yeah. Sure. Anyway,
Nothing.
let's finish up.
One more quick. I just was kind of curious. What was the concept behind Revolution X? What made you guys decide to do that, and how did you get Aerosmith involved in it?
We basically kept the same team from Terminator 2, and we moved over to a new game. And again, the leads of the project were George Petro and Jack Hager. And what I was working on was a new display system, a new sort of a pseudo 3D, because Terminator 2 was multiplanar.
Right.
And that was developed by the guy that left, who I came and replaced. But that was already in place, and it worked great for Terminator 2. But I was kind of looking to do something that was maybe a little more pseudo 3D. We used a pseudo 3D system in Us versus Them to get the different points of the different perspectives and points of view. So I tried to do something similar, and the results were very good. So I created a sort of a universe building tool. So you could actually create these worlds, but it was only pseudo 3D. It was everything was billboards, and you could only move forward. You couldn't rotate to the side. So you could lateral side to side, or you could move forward and back. And that was, to me, was a step forward in gaming, because we really didn't have true 3D systems yet in the arcades.
Right.
So I developed this display system, and then George and Jack had this idea for Revolution X, music is the weapon. That was the.
How did you guys get Aerosmith in?
Yeah, how'd you get Aerosmith?
Williams had people that contacted Aerosmith's people, and our people talked to their people, and the next.
But I'm
thing
just
you know,
saying, why Aerosmith? Why not somebody like a Poison or somebody else?
Aerosmith represented what we were trying to represent. Revolution, using music as a way to break free of establishment, and
was it
Aerosmith
always
is a
CDs
kick-ass
that you were
hard rock
throwing and
band.
everything? I mean, did you tailor the game around the concept that you're using a musical group, or was it actually based on? I mean, were you actually throwing CDs the whole time?
Yeah, that was the concept. That was the
originally.
original concept,
Okay,
yeah.
so you didn't tailor it around what you signed Aerosmith.
No. It was
Okay.
we wanted to get Aerosmith, and we actually had him for 2 days in the studio, 13-hour days.
Damn.
By that time, we had our own blue screen studio where we, used my little software system to digitize stuff.
That's so cool.
And
you're everything that looks real in video games. You pioneered that stuff. That's so awesome.
They would do whatever we said. I remember George was directing. Steven Tyler. He's like, yeah, do that, do a kick like you do, and you'd be like, yeah, he had a mic stand with all the stars, and they couldn't have been nicer guys. I mean, they were awesome.
You take pictures? You have pictures of them and stuff at home?
Yeah, we got pictures of them and us with them. They were calling up. They were calling up people's wives and stuff. He's like, you call my wife and tell I mean, who would have thought? I mean, I would never on my own think of asking a celebrity to do that, but it's a funny thing.
That's funny. That's funny.
Do you consider yourself a celebrity?
No.
You are.
You are.
Okay. I consider myself a regular guy. The other thing we haven't really talked about, and that's fine, but I've also been an actor as long as I've been a video game designer.
Oh, definitely.
I didn't know.
That. I didn't know that.
And living in, I haven't accomplished much that people would know of. So, a lot of people think, well, if you're not famous, you're not really an actor. Although,
that's not true.
But living in Los Angeles, I've met many celebrities, and those are celebrities. I don't consider myself a celebrity. I'm just like your regular guy that happened to do something that people still like, and I'm
What have you done as an actor? I mean, films, stage.
Mostly stage.
What movies did he do?
Oh yeah, you were talking about your stage screen,
stage
what you were doing as an actor.
Right. Mostly stage in Chicago. That's where I started acting in Chicago. And then when I moved to Los Angeles, I tried to get TV and film work. But it's I don't get much. I've been on General Hospital twice.
That's cool.
As who?
Let's see.
Oh hell, he watches soaps.
No, my wife watches General
The first time I was
Hospital.
on General Hospital was probably 6 years ago, and I was the assistant to John Jacks
Okay.
in one episode.
Oh,
John
okay.
Jacks
It's only one
was
episode.
Jax's father.
Right.
And then
funny.
I was on this last summer, as a security guard in a cemetery.
Oh, okay.
And
Was any voice parts on the security?
What do you mean?
Did you have any? Did you say any
Speaking
role.
role. Yeah, it was a speaking role. It was what's called an under 5. That means
Okay.
I had less than 5 lines or fewer. As a security guard in a cemetery, I held a gun on the good guy who was trying to break into a mausoleum to save somebody from exploding, and he knocks me out. That was my part on General Hospital. And I was on the practice. I delivered the verdict.
Cool.
And I was on ER as a radiologist. I had one line.
Cool.
So that's my television acting.
Well, thanks, Warren, for stopping by
My
with us.
pleasure.
We're going to let you get out of here. We really appreciate your time, and thanks for hanging out.
Very, very.
Thank you for Q-Bert.
Thrilled to be here.
It meant a lot to us. I mean, I'm sure you've heard it before, but there are games that stick in people's heads forever, and Q-Bert's one of them.
I honestly couldn't be more thrilled. It's very rewarding. That's why you asked earlier if I'm remembered as the Q-Bert guy. There are worse things. I've enjoyed my life, and if I'm remembered by everybody else that way, I couldn't complain.
Cool.
Thanks again, Warren.
You are very welcome.
Here comes another great audio commentary from the past, right here on the best of Retro Gaming Radio.
Bryan was down here for Classic Gaming Expo. We were going to hook up the computers and make sure that we had all of our stuff together, and I'm glad we did. We really needed the extra time to get the show set up. And Bryan decided that he wanted a Sega Nomad. So we decided to go on a quest to see if we could buy him a Sega Nomad here in Phoenix. Well, eventually we managed to secure him one. Probably paid too much. Nomad wasn't in the greatest shape, but he got the Nomad. So we decided we were going to go hunting for Genesis cartridges. Now, Genesis cartridges is something that nobody can have enough of, especially if you've got a Nomad. So we went around and we learned that there's a big underground network of classic game cartridges and consoles. And basically, you go into one of these stores, that have Xbox and PS2 all over their signs on the front. You go in there and you say, hey, show me the stuff. They whip out this, Men in Black 2 style. They whip out this secret door, and all these cartridges come rolling over. It's not that bad, but you got to kind of ask around. And we went to one place, and they said, well, have you tried Games Plus? Well, we didn't know they sold Genesis. Yeah, go over there. They got a bunch of Genesis stuff. So we started making the rounds, and our rounds ended up getting us to Funcoland. Now, I'm sure we all know about Funcoland. Now, this particular Funcoland is located in Southwest Phoenix. So this is for all of you Phoenix residents as your warning not to go shopping for classic gaming cartridges over there. Myself and Bryan go to this Funcoland. And, of course, they have this big bin of Sega Genesis cartridges out on the floor. And we're thinking payday, right? So we're flipping through all the cartridges. And, of course, the only things that are out there like, John Madden, Umpty Squat this, and, basically all the sports games you were tired of before they even came out. And Bryan and myself are going, wow, this is kind of a bust. Well, then we spot, shelves of Genesis cartridges behind the counter. Now, before I go further, I want to bring this to your attention because it could be important. Now, you know my producer, Bryan Smith. You've seen pictures. He's this little short black guy. Optimus skating for Gary Coleman. That'll make the show. Anyway, and we were dressed in casuals. We didn't come in a suit and tie. Okay, we came in street clothes. So we went up to the counter and it's like, hey, those are Genesis cartridges back there, aren't they? And the guy behind the counter, he's kind of uptight. You can kind of tell. He was one of those kind of corporate types that are just way too concerned about stuff.
And his assistant was a gal. She was down unloading cartridges or something out of a box, and she seemed a little more happy-go-lucky, but you could definitely tell who was in charge when you first started talking to him. And he's like, yeah. It's like, great, can we, come around back and take a look? We're interested in, buying a bunch of Sega cartridges. No. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, it's good. Can we come back now? No. Well, we want to see the cartridges. We want to buy some Sega cartridges. Well, what kind of games are you looking for? Well, I don't know. We're browsing. We're window shopping. We don't know what all's out there for Genesis, and we want to just kind of poke through them. We'd like to take a look. No. And it readily became apparent that this guy didn't want to sell us any Genesis cartridges. Now, understand, folks, it's not like this store was teeming with kids lining up to spend $80 on an Xbox game. The store was empty. And it's like, well, can you take a handful of them off the shelf and put them down here and just let us look through them? No, I can't do that. Well, do you got a list? How about a list? You got a list of what's up there? No. Will you read us off the titles? We want to buy cartridges. We've got money and we want to spend it. And the guy's like, well, I can't really help you out unless you know what you want. I mean, I was stunned. Bryan finally just point blank said, we want to spend money here. Let us see the cartridges. And the guy just pretended he didn't hear anything. Finally I looked up and managed to, I leaned over the counter until I thought he was going to bitch slap me. And I finally saw Miss Pac-Man, so I said, I'll take that Miss Pac-Man up there. And it's like, we were putting the guy out. These weren't, you'd think, oh yeah, well he's only selling them for $1 or $2, so what's it worth his time? Hell no, these were like $5 to $12 cartridges, because, a lot of them weren't common, and it's Funcoland, so you're going to pay double the price anyway. And the guy looked like he went out of his way. And Bryan and I were looking at each other, and we're basically saying, what the hell's going on? He's like, well, we can't keep all the good cartridges out on the floor. They get stolen. You see the area that we're in here. Basically insinuating that Bryan and I were going to rob them blind if he put the cartridges anywhere near our grasp. I was pretty insulted. And I wasn't even the black guy in the room, and I was insulted. I can imagine what Bryan felt. So we bought our stuff. We almost didn't buy anything, but, what do you do? So we bought a couple things, and we left. I looked over at Bryan, I'm like, what in the hell was that? He said, it's a black thing. I'm like, no, come on, that can't be no black thing. He was just a dick. He didn't want to sell us any cartridges. And he's like, no, I've seen it before. It's a black thing. I said, I don't get it. I don't get it. He could have made sales. And it occurred to me that, this isn't the first time that I've gone to a store, and had people basically not want to sell me anything. And I don't understand. This is your job. This is what you do. You sell cartridges. I don't understand why you're bending over backwards to hook me up. Then I started thinking about it, and Bryan and I started talking about it. And, Funcoland and Fry's, you get a feeling, hey, for minimum wage, they really don't give a rat's butt whether or not you get a Miss Pat cartridge.
Another great flashback right here on the best of Retro Gaming Radio.
Since I'm an old C64 hand, as if you didn't know it already, previous shows are more or less a pretty dead giveaway, I'll be looking at another C64 obscure classic this week. My goal in this section of the show is to bring the listener back to a classic game that perfectly demonstrates what makes retro gaming so much damn fun. The gameplay. Play without the flash of full-motion video cutscenes, without tri-filtering, anti-aliasing 16-megabyte texture memory, and without throwing the player back into the same old game with the same old engine, with the same old plot, with the same old weapons. This week we look at the classic Realms of Impossibility, one of the early Electronic Arts games before they started cloning a dozen sport games every year. As with most 8-bit games, Realms of Impossibility was available for a multitude of platforms, including Atari, C64, and Apple II. But as usual with the C64's incredible VIC-2 video chip and SID sound chip, this game was wicked gnarly on the C64. Realms of Impossibility could best be summed up as one of the earliest examples of the arcade RPG, which Legends of Zelda for the Nintendo turned into a multi-million-dollar industry. Realms of Impossibility also brought forth one of the first isometric view games, which is probably most popularly brought forth in Diablo. Unlike its modern-day cousins, Realms of Impossibility worked more like Zelda. The rooms or areas didn't scroll with you per se. You moved to the edge of the room and it would smoothly shift completely to the next room before you could continue. The gameplay overall was pretty simple. Select a level with really cool names. Some had to be unlocked from other levels, and retrieve a key from somewhere on that level and get back out. Sure, monsters galore. Spiders, snakes, zombies, all the basic nasties. Treacheries abound, bridges, ladders, areas you can't see yourself, lava, and much more. In your quest, you don't have a weapon per se. Rather, you gather spells to cast to help you out. Spells like freeze, confuse, protect. As you're touched by creatures, your hit points dwindle away. Faster, of course, with the nastier creatures. And when you're out of hit points, you're dead. Period. The levels are very well thought out. Some of them even maybe being a bit too evil. In other words, some levels are difficult to figure out. Just finding the key itself is a pain in the ass. Zelda people should really like this game. One of Realms of Impossibility's biggest strengths is that of multiplayer. With all the talk of multiplayer death matches in today's gaming, I think the world forgot about multiplayer cooperation games like Realms of Impossibility. Most modern games that demonstrate the power of good cooperative play are games like 1943 and Gauntlet. Sure, you're working towards the same goal, but heaven forbid you leak some goodies away from your buddies. With 1943, you could actually save your friend's ass by sharing your energy between the both of you by sitting on top of each other for a second or two, splitting the energy between you. Now, games that you work together and can actually help each other in the time of crisis, other than covering each other's back, are far and few between. Hell, I can't even think of another game other than 1943 and Realms of Impossibility where you could actually save each other like that. In Realms of Impossibility, you and the other player cooperatively get the key. Wait, I know. The clever people in the audience are thinking, but wait. If you got to move to the edge of the screen to move to the next one, what happens to the other player when the other player leaves the screen? That's the best part. You both have to push against the edge of the screen at the same time. Yep, you got it. You being dexterous and Studley make it to the edge of the screen quick. But your Neo Geo game-playing buddy is getting his ass eaten alive in the corner trying to snag the spell scroll. Seconds later, he lies dead, and the monsters seek new prey, namely you. So you run back to your buddy, losing a dozen hit points or two, and touch him, giving him 10 hit points and another lease on life. Just a little sidetrack here. I still remember spending the night at my friend's house and his mom coming into his bedroom where we were playing Realms of Impossibility together, wondering why in the hell we kept screaming out, touch me, damn it, touch me now. If you want my help, you better touch me. Yeah, those were the good old days. Needless to say, I wasn't invited over much after that.
This is the best of Retro Gaming Radio, featuring Shane R. Monroe and Bryan Kid Hype Smith.
It's time for a 16-bit flashback.
Bryan wants to make me play a game I don't want to play.
Wait.
Just so that I can biatch slap all over it. Now, it seems that we got a lot of good. Well, I guess I shouldn't say good. We got a lot of feedback on Chrono Trigger, and he thinks that we could reproduce the success if we play Super Mario. Was it Super Mario Land?
Super Mario
World for SNES. Now, you all know how much I love the SNES anyway. So we're going to have a little fun with this. Because Bryan's making me.
Oh, you're such a victim.
Yeah, don't call me Shane anymore. That's my slave name.
Call me Kichwa. Here's a check for $20,000.
Yeah, how do you spell Kichwa? No, screw Kichwa. It's S-H-A-N-E. Okay, do we have to turn this up so they can hear it?
Yeah.
Oh, it's picking it up pretty good. Or no, it's not. No, it's not picking. How do you turn it up? Master volume?
Yeah.
That it?
Turn it up.
If anybody ever needs to ask why on earth Nintendo is ever considered a kiddie box, they need to look at this.
Now everything's too loud.
It'd be good background noise. I do what I want.
Whatever.
I do what I want.
Hopefully this is not too loud.
Okay,
you want to start?
All right, I'm going to start. I'm going to play a one-player game. The Mode 7 was nice, thank you. All right, hey, guess what? I get to read before I play again. And you know what? You can't skip it.
Yeah, you can. Hit the... No, dude.
Dude, you can't skip it.
I guess you can.
It didn't. Did you see it let me skip it?
You're right. You're so right.
So now it's okay. So another little Mode 7 effect. I got my first world. What the hell's the jump button? There it is. Okay, so I get to jump on top. I get to jump up and get this thing. It's a big bullet, and I'm going to crouch down. What's the... You know what? Sid and Marty Krofft were behind this, weren't they? You see that big ass bullet like that? Okay, so basically what we're talking about is basically this is Super Mario Brothers. See, I just ate a mushroom and got
This
big.
is part of the Super Mario Brothers. This is the 4th game in the Super Mario Brothers series.
4th game? Jeez.
Yes.
That and Will and Grace is still on. Imagine. Sometimes you just can't figure out the great mysteries in life. So we're going to walk up here. We got purple dragons. Now the dragons are actually pretty. Just to be fair, the graphics on the dragons are pretty good. And let's see here. We got.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith.
What's with these sideways things coming out of here? Is there some reason I'm supposed to be up on these sideways mountains things?
No, you don't have to.
Except for this big coin up here. Okay. There was just some mushroom came out of nowhere. I swear Sid and Marty Krofft did this.
Okay, he just got hit, so you shrunk back down the...
Now where did that mushroom come from? Would I have a mushroom in backup?
No.
But I did have a mushroom. Now why can't I have the mushroom back? What the hell's that?
Those are flowers.
Dude, there ain't no stem on that flower.
It's a flying flower. Jump up.
Well, I was waiting for it to come back up. Can I go in?
No, you're not.
Where's that damn button at? Where is it? Which one is it?
What are you trying to do?
Trying to do that spinning thing. There it is. Is that how you break these?
No.
If there's some way you can break these.
You can't break them from up on top, being on top of them.
You sure?
Yeah, I think. I don't know what you're missing.
Somewhere.
No, dude, you cannot, Shane.
What?
You cannot break them.
Why are they here then?
How
when did you
say they cannot?
Don't say pig in front of Jesus.
Shane,
you know what? I'm playing. You know what? Shut up. Who's playing this? Do you want to play it?
No.
See, there's that little freaky dude. That looks like an Al Jolson flower. Look at that. Mommy.
Oh, because it's got big lips.
Got big old lips.
Big white lips.
Big white. Let's see what's up with that.
Dude, you're running out of time.
Shut up. I'm doing what I want. What's this thing? What do I do here?
Keep going.
I'm working on it. What's this? More stuff for me to read. Groovy.
Why didn't you read what it said?
What? Dude, I don't read these games. Come on. If I want to read,
it gave you some tips on what to do.
I don't want to read. I want to be like the other 89% of Americans.
You don't want to read the effing manual?
No RTFM for me. Okay. I've been bouncing the crap out of these guys. Point of advice. Dude, that is like total Jap.
Look, see? Use the X or Y button, which is the top buttons.
Are you trying to tell me that point of advice is not like total English? Dude, point of advice.
Well, send you to this. You didn't pick it up, you kicked it.
I wanted to kick it. I do what I want. Oh, that's wrong. Ah! These bullets are freaking me out. Oh, well. It won't be the first time. So basically, for those of you who've never played this game, it's basically...
all 1% of you?
What's that?
All 1% of you? You need that. Go over there.
I'm going back over here. Hit the little quit.
No, you gotta jump underneath it.
I know it. God damn it! Why do they do that?
3, 2, 1, 0. You ran out of time because you're goofing up on the other side.
Shut the hell up. I'll do what I want.
Time up.
Dude, you know what? First of all, that's the problem. You shouldn't run out of time on a freaking platform. Like
because normal people would have finished the level by now.
See, that's their fault. What's this box for? What is this little box with little things around it? What's this little? Yeah, what is that?
Point of advice.
No, it's not. This is the point of advice. What's this?
Oh,
what's this? What's this box right here? You don't see that?
Oh, the see-through box?
Yeah, what is that?
I don't know.
I guess I should have instructions for this, huh? I guess you can't do anything to it.
I guess not.
Screw the point of advice.
Did you ask me about that box?
No, I know what that box does. It gives me English. I get English translations in there. That big bullet's just too wrong.
But you have to admit, that's pretty impressive.
With a big bullet?
Yeah.
That's pretty good. Now, how do I grab this thing? Oops.
X or Y?
Yeah, you told me that. You know what? Screwed. This is screwed. Okay, I'm gonna go to this other one over here. I'm not having a lot of luck over there. Okay, this is like, are those supposed to be clouds?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. They spent all their money on the Mode 7, I guess. Oh, that was cool. I got to break it. Of course, it probably would have done me better elsewhere. See, I know how to do this bit. I played Mario Brothers before. I like this game the first time I played it. See, I want to know what that box is for, that little...
I have no clue, dude.
Hey, hey, hey. Oh, I was going to wait for him to come down. I was going to beat his ass. Give me that. I know what this is.
And then?
And then you come back and have stuff.
And then?
Da, 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 da. Eat that.
You have to go like
Eat that.
underground and stuff.
Oh, that just sucked. I just lost my minion. Get your ass off of there. Okay, so I'm... Oh, okay.
That's the only way you can get him is by having Yoshi. Your minion
Give
was
me,
Yoshi.
get back here.
There's Yoshi.
My little minion guy. Give me my
His
Yoshi.
name is Yoshi.
Dude, I put Yoshi on my...
On your what?
Put Yoshi on my rice the other day. Yoshi sauce.
Now I think when Yoshi eats something like that, you can spit the stuff out.
Oops. That's not the right button to push out. What about this?
Oh, that's the eat.
Hey, look, it's Castlevania. What was that?
That's a football dude.
No, I don't want the football dude. I do what I want. Smack him on the head. Get your ass back down. Oops. I missed it. Can I get back up there?
And you have to admit, this isn't too bad so far.
No, it's not that bad.
See?
Except for okay, wait a minute. First of all, I'm riding this little green thing.
Yoshi.
Dude, I ain't calling it Yoshi. I'm gonna
His
call it
name
a
is
green
Yoshi,
thing. I'm
dude.
gonna call it a green thing.
They made games about him. Yeah,
I know they made games about him.
Don't touch those. Those are
I
bad
hit 'em.
guys.
Those are bad guys? They look like little groundhogs. No, they don't look like groundhogs.
They're like
Actually,
moles.
they don't even look like that. They look like little round brown things. Look at that.
That's right.
Hey, I didn't make the game. All right, I'm just reviewing it here. Okay. So we're jumping around. Those boxes are freaking me out, dude. It's like those little.
Get that. Get that.
It's like those little see-through babies on
There you go.
Silent Hill.
Found the warp area.
I found a secret spot. Mom, I want a secret spot for my birthday.
How come I can't get up there?
I don't know.
What am I missing? Anyone played this? Oh,
What'd you do?
I jumped out of the.
Oh, okay.
I used him as a little. How do you do this if you don't got little green?
You don't do it.
Cooper snapper.
You don't.
Ah.
Oh, you get an extra min.
Ah,
Okay, now go back on the. See where the. Go to the highest point that you can go to, dude.
Damn, I'm hitting the wrong button. Problem is, I got to get underneath these guys. Okay, jump, hit it. Hey, look at that. Who the man? Oops. Probably running out of time again.
No, you got.
All right, I'm gonna leave.
29.
Okay, so I got out of the hidden area here. Whoop! Damn, all Jolson got me. Damn, you got teeth now. What's up with that? I just lost my little minion. I lost my minion, dude. Am I supposed to get that?
Yeah, get that.
Hang on, I gotta get that guy off of him first. Get off. Look, it's Al Bundy. How do I get that? Oh, okay. Was that a Smart Bomber song? Anything hidden in there?
No, no, dude.
There's a little P thing. What's this?
That's the end of the level, so.
Alrighty then. Yeah. I just lost my damn mic. We finished the whole level. Course cleared. No one say I can't play this long enough. And there's like 25 of these games, aren't there, that do this exact same thing?
25 games?
Yeah, are there like 25 Super Mario Worlds?
No, there's not 25 Super Mario Worlds.
Is there more than 2?
There's Yoshi's Island.
So basically, never mind. I just died
There's
again.
Kirby.
I haven't seen Kirby in here yet. I know who Kirby is.
Kirby's not in this game.
I had a Game Boy originally until I got smart and got a Lynx. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, yeah, nice trick. Little freaking collapsing things. I do what I want. So I got these little brown platforms that drop. One of these better be a freaking Yoshi guy. How'd you like that? I wish I could have said I did that on purpose. That'd have been cool.
Why'd you do that?
Dude, I don't know. I was trying to jump. Hit the wrong button. I'm dead. I can understand why people classify Nintendo as a kid's gaming system, though. When I see stuff like this, Dude,
It's cute. It's cute, but it's fun. It's
adult
challenging.
people are ashamed to play games like this.
I'm an adult. I'm not ashamed to play this.
You're different though. You're special. People who play Splinter Cell will not play this stuff.
Am I short by special? Yeah.
Damn, I missed it again. This sucks.
Dizord.
I Dizord yet again. How many lives do I get?
Well, you a couple extra lives. You're down. How many you have left?
I got
3.
three. How do I get 3? I thought this game was gonna be over by now.
Because you kept getting mushrooms that had
Damn it.
extra minutes.
Don't let me get that anymore, dude.
You don't want to play this longer than you have to.
No.
Why? Oh.
What? You want to know? Oh, look at that! I made it. Of course, you can't get back up here now. Whoops.
You screwed.
I screwed. How many more lives can I get rid of in a hurry?
You down?
I'm gonna go this way. I'm gonna go back here. This level looks easier. I'm gonna wuss out and go back to this level.
And see, this is better than Mega Man because it starts you from your checkpoint. It starts you from
Yeah, it's already better than Mega Man. Yep.
You can slide down and kill him that way.
Oh, can you?
Yeah.
Oh. I still want to know where the Sid and Marty Krofft bullet comes from.
HR pumping stuff.
Give me that. How do I get that thing?
X.
I did. I tried X. It didn't work. Don't be giving me that. Damn it. I don't want to read. Stop it. Get up there. I got to race over here now and get it, except for Mr. Bullethead.
Run.
I'm going.
Okay, now. There you go.
Oh, God, I got another life. You suck. I didn't think I was supposed to get another life from that. Son of a bitch. I'm going to be playing this stupid game for the rest of the night.
Nothing wrong with that.
No, yeah, it is. I got better things to do.
Like what?
Dude,
you can jump on him and kill him.
The bullet?
Yes.
Oh. I'm too busy getting about ready to get snagged by the plant. What's this guy? Look, it's Gollum with a helmet. Precious! Oops.
Dude, just complete the level. Go! Just go and complete the level.
No. Why do you want me to complete the level? It means I have to play more. Look at that, I had 196 seconds left. He just flipped me off.
No.
That little son of a bitch. Oh, I get to go up the ladder now?
Yep. There's like 96 levels in this.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh,
there's hidden levels.
What's the point in putting a smart bomb on a screen where there's no enemies?
Oh, no, I think you can.
Oh, it gave me coinage. Look at all the sprites. Probably an animated tile set, though, huh?
I don't know. I don't work for Nintendo. Now you see them, now you don't.
Yeah, thanks for the coins. There's anything up here?
You got another extra man.
This is cheap.
You got 100 coins.
No wonder people play games like this. They get extra lives all the time.
You can run fast if you hold down the A button, I think. There you go.
The power of the Switch.
Now you can see what all those invisible boxes are. You can go back to those levels and...
Oh, yeah, that's about value add. Hey, let's get him to go back and play those same levels again.
You have no patience.
I don't. Hey, look, it's the Sonic Ring thing. What am I doing? Back through the water.
And you can play those levels over. You can go and...
No, I'm not going to play those levels over again. No, where are you going? Get back there.
You have to finish the one you didn't do yet.
Yeah, that's where he's going to now.
That's where I'm going now.
With the Al Jolson music.
Yeah, look at that.
Ragtime music.
I'll tell you what. Nintendo racist. I'm going to see freaking Lilo and Stitch here in a minute.
See, now you can see how you have a platform now?
Yeah. What an incentive. Give me my little guy.
What are you trying to do, though?
Trying to get on there. Run, you little pig. Okay. I don't like that little flying turtle, dude. He's freaking me out.
You know, you're probably...
You know what?
You're mad because you don't have any kind of timing skills like my wife.
You know what? You have to have, like, cocaine or something. Oh, hell no.
Oh!
I took little Yoshi with me, at least, though.
Oh, you're calling him Yoshi now?
No, you didn't hear me
say
Yoshi.
Yeah, you said Yoshi.
I didn't say Yoshi.
He's no longer Minion Man. He's Yoshi.
He's my minion.
The Minion Man March.
What the hell? We got Al Jolson on here. We got ragtime music. All we need is a Malcolm X script, and we're good to go. Mario X.
Mario X, there you go.
I'd be there for that. Can I have a slice of pizza, please?
Oh!
Yeah. Hey, I can't sit. Oh, I see how it's going to be. These platforms don't move unless you're on them. Oh. Dude, I just got hosed. What are these things supposed to be down here for?
Well, first of all,
what am I missing here? There's something wrong.
I think you can.
What? The platform stuck me at the bottom.
It's because you broke the swing.
You broke the swing.
I suck.
You crossed the streams.
I crossed the streams. Mario Busters. I'm screwed. Maybe you have to go back. What's in here? Don't tell me I got another life again. Okay, they got a point for level design. I didn't actually lose because I fell down there.
Even though you should have.
No, I shouldn't have.
Why not? There's Mr. Yoshi, man.
Let's see what the hell is...
Ah!
You know what happens? I don't know if I can play this anymore.
You can still play this.
No,
You're the man.
I'm not the man. I'm losing left and right.
So when you're done, you got to explain to us why you still hate this, even though you're doing pretty good at it, and you have to admit that...
It's all platform. It's a platform game.
You like platform games.
Well, yeah, I liked them the first million times I've already played them.
You still like Super Frog?
That's because I haven't finished Super Frog yet.
Well, you haven't finished this either.
You and your damn Vulcan logic. Yeah, but I like playing Super Frog. I don't like playing this.
Okay, when you're done, you got to explain to everybody why.
That's you want. Do you want to see why?
You're lame, dude. You're just uber lame. I can't help you with that.
Yes, you can. You can give me Super Frog. I can play Super Frog. I don't have flying turtles and. I'm telling you, you got to be like
Super
doing
Frog
serious weed to enjoy this.
Has
game.
those.
Give it to me. Give it to me.
It seems like the minute you get on Yoshi, you just lose your mind. So stay off of Yoshi, dude.
I'm trying to figure out the controls to his sorry ass. I'm sorry, dude. Look at what Mario's doing while he's on top of him.
He's happy.
He ain't happy.
With his butt sticking out, and he's happy.
He ain't happy. He's right. He's got his. Never mind. What kind of
spit
him out?
out? Yeah. See, look at that.
Oh man, that's
see?
Yeah.
Okay, your Super Frog do that?
I don't need Super Frog to do that. I ain't got a blue fat dinosaur thing.
The minute you get on the dinosaur, you lose your mind. I don't understand it.
Dude, it's because I don't have his controls down. I'm going to be playing this thing until I'm dead. I just can't believe they made so many of these. You'd think you'd be tired as hell of this stuff the first time you play it. This is so much like Super Mario Brothers that...
Is it? It's called a sequel?
Dude, you know what? You used to be all behind me with this anti-sequel thing, and yet you're enjoying this.
Because technically, this is not a sequel to Super. This is a sequel to Super Mario Bros. But this was back when you did a sequel. The games were completely original and just not basically. Super
You call
Mario.
this game original?
Well, by the time it got this far, it started getting silly.
Give me that. Yet they made 3 more of these, and people waited in line at Toys R Us for this.
Well, then you got Mario 64, which is a 3D version of this, where you just wander around aimlessly.
Yeah, the N64 tech demo.
Yeah.
Wario World.
And you got Wario, which is basically M upside down.
Dude, he looks like he's gonna
And
pinch
you
a
gotta
loaf.
wait for-
look at Yoshi. He's like,
That's not right.
Leave it to me to be able to figure out a way to pervert a Nintendo kiddie game. Oh, I missed it again.
That's why you die, because you're such a smartass.
I know, but smartass gets me laughs. Game over. That's the best part of the game. Look at them graphics.
You can continue.
Oh yeah, hell no. Where's the end button?
And then it just goes back to the title screen.
Alrighty then.
1990. 1991, I'm sorry.
Well, it says both. That's because they did it in 90 and then they did it again in 91.
Okay, do you want to stop this and get
No.
some final remarks?
No, you got to give some final remarks. You got to tell people why people play stuff like this.
Stop the game.
There. Stop the game.
Okay.
Mr. Smith.
What do you want me to tell you?
You tell me the redeeming qualities of this game.
if you like platform games, if you like scrolling platforms, this is like probably one of the best scrolling platform games because it has a trillion levels, tons of hidden spots, has Yoshi, there's different things to do. The graphics are great. Thank you.
That's your fallback line. That's the Bryan Smith catchphrase.
No, seriously though, the graphics are really great. I mean, the scrolling, the parallax scrolling, like I said, don't think 2003 when playing this. Think back to when this came out and what was available. This was it, dude. This is what
this was it. I'm still trying to figure out
why. This was sold a bunch of Super Nintendos.
Why?
Because people didn't have $1,000 to buy an Amiga.
Well, they should have. I didn't have $1,000 to buy an Amiga. I had one in 1988.
And how much did you pay for your Amiga?
I don't know. I got like $500.
This machine only cost $200 when it came out.
But you know what? Every time you buy a cartridge, you use every card. How much were cartridges back then? They were $50.
Yeah, that
so how many cartridges did it take to equal the Amiga?
But you know what though? This was a pack-in. Super Mario World was a pack-in.
That's when they still had pack-ins.
Yes.
That's something that the industry has completely thrown away.
Yes.
Pack-ins are essential.
I agree.
I don't understand.
Why would this not sell a console, dude? If this was your pack-in game for the console of your choice back in 1991, why would you not buy this?
Because I would want a different pack-in.
What would you want? Ultra Beast?
Dude, not Ultra Beast.
That was the pack-in for the Genesis. And you know what happened?
You know what, though?
Let me tell you what happened. This made them make Sonic the pack-in.
Actually, Ultra Beast wasn't that bad because it was.
Are you on crack?
No. I'm saying that from an arcade.
If you want an arcade version of Ultra Beast, buy a Genesis.
That's right.
If you don't want to play Ultra Beast, you were screwed. Which hardly nobody wanted to play Ultra Beast.
Well, I can't really blame them for that one because Ultra Beast is not exactly the most exciting game.
Exactly.
But
you know what people did? They bought a Genesis, threw Ultra Beast in the garbage, and bought freaking Madden.
Sad but true. Sad but true.
I mean, you know what's funny? You can probably find Madden a lot easier than you can find Ultra Beast because people literally threw this cartridge in the garbage.
Sort of like the E of the Genesis.
Yeah.
It's scary. Scary but true.
But you can find 6 trillion Super Mario World still.
Well, of course you can.
You didn't throw your Super Mario World in the garbage.
It's because you didn't want to have to replace it for $50.
You know what's great about Mario World? It still lasts. You can give it to your kids today.
Can't nobody hear you? If you're going to comment, get on the mic. You can't say that either.
Beep, 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 beep. Yeah, they'll hear you in the background.
They'll hear you in the background.
We're going to get phone calls now.
Yeah.
It's like
Who's that lady's using that for in the background? Good. Yeah, got to now.
Yeah, you'll be on the year 5 disc.
Yeah. This is hype.
This is
with
Mrs.
her vulgar comments on Super Mario World. Can't nobody hear you.
Get back on the short bus.
Did that pick up?
Yeah, that picked up really good.
Dang.
Now, how about that?
The sound quality was nice.
Okay, let's put it this way. If I liked platform games, which I'm not a big fan.
I don't understand how you can like Super Frog but not like anything else.
You know what? Because Super Frog was one game. They didn't whore Super Frog out to 17 different versions.
But you have to admit there were 17 million different platforms for the Amiga. You told me that. Okay.
There were 17 million, but I didn't play the damn things.
Okay.
You know what? Every other game that came out for the Super Nintendo was a freaking platformer. Every other game
that's
that
not
came
true.
out for the Nintendo was a
That's not
platformer.
true, and I'm going to prove it to you because you're going to play more Super Nintendo games, so you're going to review them.
And I'm not going to like it.
That's fine, but you're going to play them.
I do not want to play any more platform games. You got to give me something that's not a platform.
Oh, that's easy. You're going to play Killer Instinct next.
That whole 5 frames per second animation.
Yes, right. You're going to play Killer Instinct next.
No, I'm not going to.
So let's finish this. Let's sum this up so we can play Killer Instinct.
Now, if I liked platformer games, the problem with this thing is this was probably this was the third iteration of this.
Fourth.
This was the 4th iteration.
Yes.
And they made like 4 more after this. I remember Super Mario 3.
That was for the regular Nintendo.
Are you sure?
Yes.
There's not Super Mario World 4.
No.
All I don't know.
That was a
the
really
one
bizarre thing about the Super Mario. They only did one Super Mario World, basically.
But
and then there was Yoshi's Island.
But every one of those games are basically the same game.
Which ones?
All the spawns of this game were the same game.
Yeah.
Okay, so they don't call it Super Mario World, but it's the same game.
No, because you have Kirby, and like you want to say, Mario turned into a white puffy cloud, pink puffy cloud.
I swear to God, everybody at Nintendo who makes these games have to be on crack.
I agree with that.
Because you know what?
There's some serious drugs.
There's got to be some serious hemp smokers.
I agree with that.
At Nintendo to come up with this stuff.
I totally agree.
Especially when Yoshi was pinching a loaf. That was the best part of the game. Was watching him sit there looking like.
The best way I used to play Super Mario Brothers drunk.
Now you know what?
And
I will tell you what.
And I was like, you don't need hallucinogenic drugs. Just get drunk and play Super Mario Brothers.
Super Mario Brothers was an excellent game. It was an excellent game. I played the crap out of it. I loved it. To me, this game is nothing more than Super Mario Brothers.
It's a continuation of the game. Think about it. Every time Nintendo came out with a new system, they always had to pull Mario out and upgrade the graphics. And dude, that's what the kids wanted. Look at the GameCube. Instead of Mario this time, it was Luigi.
No, they brought Mario back.
But yeah, you got Mario Sunshine.
You know why? Luigi was the bastard half of the Mario family. Nobody liked Luigi. Even Mario didn't like Luigi. You ever see that VH1 behind the scenes of Mario? That Luigi son of a bitch. All right, we're just not making any headway here. So we're just going to go ahead. This was Super Mario World
for the
Super Nintendo. Do you want to do this?
No, okay.
Shut the hell up.
Okay, sorry.
For 1990, 1991. Thank God it's over. Okay, stop it. Got 30 minutes of us bitching.
You were pretty fair.
You've been listening to the best of Retro Gaming Radio Volume 1 with Shane R. Monroe and Bryan Kid Hype Smith, brought to you by Fernando Flair Garcia. Look for more best of shows in our near future, and tune in to Dual Screen Radio, where I co-host a show dedicated to the great Nintendo DS. Until next time, folks, this is Shane R. Monroe saying, keep it retro.